Chapter 867. The two of them strolled around the amusement park and were a little tired. Ji-Yuchi suggested that they rest at the rest area near the fountain. Shinja naturally had no objections. They sat on the bench with drinks in their hands and looked at each other with smiles on their faces as they chatted softly. In the distance, a pair of sinister eyes were watching their every move. Ji-Yuchi raised her wrist and glanced at the time. A glint flashed through her beautiful phoenix eyes. She raised her head and said with a smile, I'm a little hungry. I want to eat a hamburger. Can you buy it for me? Okay, wait for me here in Gigai. I'll be back soon. Shinja leaned sideways and kissed her cheek. His dark sunglasses covered the complicated look in his eyes. Ji-Yuchi watched his handsome back disappear into the distance. Her gaze was gentle and her lips were curved into a smile. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that she was staring at her lover. *TCH, I've been so good to you and you've actually hooked up with another man. Following a furious reprimand, a slap came flying towards Ji-Yuchi's cheek. Ji-Yuchi seemed to turn her head in shock, but in reality, she had just barely dodged the slap. She shrank back in fear and said in a trembling voice, Who are you? I don't know you at all. The middle-aged man in front of her was wearing an old suit and his facial features were well defined. His eyes were wide open and he was furious. He pointed at Ji-Yuchi's nose and scolded, *TCH, my wife was kind enough to sponsor your education and send you to university. I didn't expect you to have evil intentions and deliberately seduce me, causing me to divorce my wife. Now that I'm bankrupt and have no money, you've hooked up with another gigolo. *TCH, I won't let you off today. The surrounding people were in an uproar. They had just seen the girl being intimate with a man wearing sunglasses. They didn't expect the girl to be so vicious despite her beauty. Not only had she seduced the husband of her benefactor who had sponsored her, now that her benefactor was bankrupt, she was seducing another man. She was really despicable. Young lady, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you shouldn't have done this. That's right. You can't forget your roots. She was kind enough to sponsor you, so she's your benefactor. How can you treat her like this? Young ladies nowadays don't know how to work hard and only know how to be a mistress. I don't know what's wrong with society. Look at her looks, she's a living vixen. Pfft. Seeing that the crowd was on his side, the middle-aged man became even more arrogant. He grabbed Ji-Yuchi's arm and dragged her forward as he scolded, come home with me, the child is still waiting to be breastfed. Let me go, I don't know you. Ji-Yuchi flew into a rage and kicked the man in the leg. The man was caught off guard and was kicked back several steps, almost falling to the ground. Everyone was pointing at Ji-Yuchi, but no one stepped forward to help her. Some nosy people even took out their phones or cameras to take pictures. She looked anxious and kept saying, I really didn't do it. I don't know him at all. *TCH, I originally wanted to let you off for the sake of our past relationship, but I didn't expect you to not even care about the child. I'm going to destroy you. The middle-aged man's eyes were red with anger and his cheeks were distorted. He pulled out a glass bottle from somewhere. The bottle was filled with a transparent liquid. He quickly pulled out the stopper and splashed the liquid on Ji-Yuchi's face. Ji-Yuchi looked flustered, but in fact, she had been staring at his hands for a long time. When he pulled out the glass bottle, she was already prepared to dodge. But she didn't expect that the moment she dodged, a figure would quickly pounce on her. He used his back to block her and hugged her as they dodged quickly. The middle-aged man splashed empty air. Most of the liquid spilled on the ground, and a small part splashed on Shinja's back. His coat immediately sizzled and smoked. Soon, a small hole was burned. Sulfuric acid, screams resounded through the sky. The crowd frantically fled. Some people were knocked to the ground. Children were squeezed and crying. The people who were initially in a circle dispersed in an instant. They were afraid that the middle-aged man would throw sulfuric acid again and endanger themselves. However, this worry was unnecessary. The middle-aged man was quickly surrounded by 2 security guards. They forcibly restrained him and brought him to the security room. Ji Yuchi didn't have the mood to pay attention to that side. She was so anxious that she was about to cry. She clumsily pulled at his clothes and said incoherently, "Quick, take off your coat. Water, fountain, quick, jump into the fountain. Don't panic, I'm fine." Shinja comforted her while quickly taking off his coat. The sulfuric acid on his coat was still corroding his clothes. His white shirt had already been burned into a small black spot. Ji Yuchi anxiously lifted up his shirt and repeatedly checked to make sure that his skin wasn't injured. Her legs went soft and she almost collapsed to the ground. He quickly turned around and held her in his arms. She tightly hugged his waist. Her tears fell like rain. "You scared me to death. Why did you rush over? If anything happened to you, I also. I don't want to live anymore." These words circled around the tip of her tongue. In the end, she swallowed them back down. She couldn't easily say such words. She had a heavy responsibility on her shoulders. She didn't only have Shinja, but also her father and Ahan. Ji Yuchi had never been so weak. She lay in his arms and burst into tears. The people around thought that she was afraid. Only Shinja knew that she was worried about him. He hugged her tightly. He couldn't wait to rub her into his body. The thrilling scene just now made his blood turn cold. He gently stroked her hair and comforted her softly. The crowd around them came and went. There were constantly people who stopped to look at them curiously. There were also people who secretly hid at the side and used their phones to record the entire scene. Shinja didn't care. He focused all his energy on the person in his arms. He tightly protected her and let her cry and vent on his chest. After a few minutes, Ji Yuchi barely managed to control her emotions. She raised her head with tears on her face and sobbed, "Don't do that again. I don't want you to get hurt." Shinja gently wiped the tears on her cheeks with his fingers and comforted her with a good temper. "And, listen to our Chi-Chi in the future." Ji Yuchi's cheeks puffed up. She said unhappily, "You're always coaxing me. If there's danger next time, you'll jump out and block it for me." This was her Shinja. Whenever there was danger, he would always block in front of her. Shinja's eyes curved slightly. It was just like a spring breeze, warm and gentle. He pinched her perky little nose lovingly and chuckled softly. "Since you understand, why are you still forcing me to do something impossible? Chi-Chi, don't deliberately send me away in the future." As smart as he was, how could he not see that she had already known that danger was approaching and had deliberately sent him away? He left in front of her as she wished. However, he didn't go far. When he saw that someone was trying to harm her, he rushed up without hesitation. Ji Yuchi's heart trembled. The words she wanted to say were stuck in her throat. She stared at his extraordinarily handsome face and his serious and determined gaze. She had no reason to reject him. She could only secretly decide that she would never let Qin Tingfang and the others hurt Shinja. A security guard led 2 policemen to them. One of the policemen said, "You 2 are the victims, right? Please follow us to the police station to make a statement." Shinja nodded. He naturally held Ji Yuchi's hand and followed them into the police car. The middle-aged man was also sitting in the police car. His hands were handcuffed. When he saw Ji Yuchi, he opened his mouth and scolded her. Words such as slut and vixen were simply unbearable. Shinja's gaze turned cold. He ignored the presence of the police and punched the man's cheek. The man's mouth immediately swelled up and he even spat out a bloody tooth. He opened his bloody mouth and shouted in exasperation, "Police comrade, I want to sue him for intentional injury. Hurry up and arrest him." Shinja glanced at him expressionlessly. He slowly adjusted his sleeves and said indifferently, "If you want to sue me, go ahead. I'll accompany you to the end." Police comrade, he's so arrogant. Why aren't you arresting him? The middle-aged man opened his bloody mouth and roared. The two policemen's eyes were sharp. They could see that the handsome man in front of them was not to be trifled with. Moreover, he was almost splashed with sulfuric acid. It was normal for him to vent his anger in a bad mood. Therefore, they only gave a simple warning and did not make things difficult for Xinjia. The middle-aged man's name was Wang Wei. When he was taking the statement, he insisted that Ji Yuqi came from a poor family and was a village girl who was admitted to university with his and his ex-wife's financial support. He also said that Ji Yuqi seduced him and caused him to divorce his ex-wife and so on. His spittle flew everywhere as he spoke with righteous indignation about Ji Yuqi's heartlessness. He said that after he went bankrupt, she abandoned her son who was just 6 months old and hooked up with a new sugar daddy. When he said this, he glared fiercely at Xinjia. Xinjia did not even bother to pay attention to him. He described the situation in a clear and orderly manner to the other policemen. Xinjia's ability to express himself was very strong. With just a few words, he described the crisis situation vividly. Even the policeman who was taking the statement for him could feel the urgency and danger at that time. Ji Yuqi also described the situation in detail. She said that she did not know Wang Wei at all. He rushed up to her like a madman and scolded her. Then, he took out sulfuric acid. After some investigation, the police confirmed Ji Yuqi's identity and confirmed that she did not have any contact with Wang Wei. After the statement was taken, she could leave. When Ji Yuqi left the police station, she turned back to look at Wang Wei who was still being interrogated. A thick haze appeared in her eyes. In her previous life, it was this man who pretended to be crazy and splashed sulfuric acid on her cheeks. At that time, she subconsciously used her arms to block it. Her face was not injured but a few drops of sulfuric acid splashed on her eyes, causing her to lose her sight and her arms to be severely burned. Later, it was Xinjia who transplanted his eyes to her. Awesome novel, Xinwu 799. Chapter 868. The operation was a success, and she could see again. However, she had been kept in the dark about how much Xinjia had sacrificed for her. She happily accepted Jiang Tianhao's proposal and threw Xinjia to the back of her mind. She happily prepared for her wedding. The day before the wedding, Zhe came to her and handed her the aquamarine necklace, saying that it was Xinjia's wedding gift. She asked about Xinjia's recent situation, and Zhe said that Xinjia had been in a car accident and had lost his sight. She was such a fool that she actually believed Zhe's words. Then, she held Jiang Tianhao's hand without any psychological burden and walked down the aisle. It wasn't until the wedding ended that she saw Xinjia sitting alone in the last row, looking in her direction with unfocused eyes. Ji Yuqi's heart felt like it had been hit by a hammer when she thought about what had happened in her previous life. It was so painful that she couldn't breathe. She held the arm of the person beside her tightly, and tears flowed out of her eyes uncontrollably. Xinjia sensed that something was wrong with her. He put his arm around her waist and leaned into his embrace. "Don't be afraid, Chi-Chi. I'm here for you. Don't be afraid, I'm here for you." When she was most afraid, he would always appear by her side and shelter her from the wind and rain. How blind must she have been in her previous life to not be able to see his love and be fooled by Jiang Tianhao's illusion. Soon, the police found out that Wang Wei had indeed sponsored a poor university student. That girl was called Li Yan. Because of Li Yan's intervention, he divorced his ex-wife and married her. However, after his company went bankrupt, Li Yan ran away with another man, so Wang Wei was greatly affected. He had some mental problems and often cursed young women on the road. Unexpectedly, his behavior escalated this time and he used sulfuric acid to hurt innocent people. In the Ji family's living room, Ji Yuqi stared expressionlessly at the police officer sitting opposite her. "So, the doctor said that Wang Wei has mental problems. Even if he deliberately hurt someone, he doesn't have to bear legal responsibility." The policeman nodded apologetically. "Yes, Miss Ji, this is the law." Originally, his guardian had to bear the responsibility, but after he divorced his ex-wife, there was only a half-year-old son left at home. There was no guardian at all, so he could only be transferred to a mental hospital for treatment. Ji Yuchi lowered her eyes slightly. This situation was exactly the same as in her previous life. Even if she intentionally hurt someone, she could still avoid jail. At that time, she really thought it was an accident and stupidly didn't pursue the matter. This time, she wouldn't be so merciful. She was silent for a while before she slowly said, "I understand. Thank you for making the trip." "You're welcome. This is what I should do." The police officer stood up and politely bid farewell to everyone present. Ji Yuchi personally walked him to the door. After he left, Ji Bowen angrily slapped the table. Chi-Chi suffered such a huge shock for nothing. This is too despicable. That kind of scum should be locked up in jail. Ji Yuchi inadvertently glanced at Chen Tingfang and caught the flash of smugness in her eyes. She said gently, "Dad, don't be angry. It's a good thing that I'm fine." Speaking of which, that person is quite pitiful. Ji Bowen's heart ached. Chi-Chi, you're just too kind. If Shinja didn't rush out to save you, you would have been. Sigh. What's wrong with society now? It's a mess. Even walking on the streets can lead to accidents. Dad won't dare to let you go out in the future. Ji Yuchi originally wanted to hide Shinja's identity, but she didn't expect that when he rushed over to save her, his sunglasses would fall to the ground. In addition, the video of them being attacked was uploaded to the internet. His identity was exposed, so everyone in the Ji family knew that it was Shinja who saved Yuchi. Chen Tingfang also knew that she had been deceived by Ji Yuchi. In addition, she didn't manage to disfigure her as she wished. Chen Tingfang was so angry that she almost broke her silver teeth. Fortunately, she made the right arrangements. That idiot Wang Wei was transferred to a mental hospital and wouldn't rat her out. She really didn't understand why Ji Yuchi was so lucky that even someone like young Master Shen would help her. When she compared Yizisu to her, she felt even more resentful. Why didn't her daughter live up to her expectations and find a decent son-in-law for her? Chen Tingfang was still sulking. Ji Yuchi obediently comforted her father. The father and daughter talked for a while more. Ji Bowen asked his daughter to go upstairs to rest and recuperate. Ji Yuchi obediently went upstairs. When she returned to her room, the smile on her face disappeared, leaving only a bone-chilling coldness. She dialed a number and said indifferently, "Help me do something." She didn't know if Wang Wei was lucky or unlucky. The mental hospital he was about to be sent to was the same mental hospital that Su Yanqing was in. What awaited him ahead was a fate worse than death. One day, he would feel that prison was much better than a mental hospital. Under the gentle sunlight, Ji Yuchi's eyes were as cold as ice, and the arc at the corners of her mouth was ghastly and terrifying. She was like a malicious spirit from hell, causing one's heart to tremble. There was a knock on the door. "Come in." She turned around with a faint smile on her face. "Chi-Chi," the man's voice was urgent. His chest rose and fell rapidly, and there was great fear in his deep eyes. Ji Yuchi was stunned. "Tang Feng, you..." Before she could finish speaking, he had already walked over quickly and pulled her into his arms. His arms held her tightly, and he wanted to squeeze her into his body. "Chi-Chi, it's good that you're fine. I rushed over as soon as I heard that something happened to you." His voice was low and hoarse, and there was a trace of panic in it. Tang Feng. She couldn't be cruel to this man who grew up with her. She sighed, patted his back, and said gently, "I'm fine." "Tang Feng, can you let go of me?" "I won't let go. I won't let go anymore." Tang Feng's hoarse voice was like sandpaper rubbing against each other. For the first time, someone as arrogant and calm as him showed panic. "Chi-Chi, don't leave me." Ji Yuchi's lips moved a few times. She wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. She only said dryly, "Tang Feng, don't be like this." During this period, Tang Feng had been looking for all kinds of reasons to get close to her. She wasn't a fool. She could tell that he wanted to pursue her, but she couldn't reciprocate his feelings. Tang Feng suddenly let go of her. His dark eyes looked at her deeply, then he grabbed her arm and walked out quickly. She was dragged by him and passively followed him. She asked anxiously, "Where are you taking me?" He was silent and only cared about dragging her. Soon, she knew the answer. He dragged her to the door of the study and knocked. "Tang Feng, what's the matter?" Ji Bowen looked at the young man who walked into the study in surprise. His handsome face was solemn, and he was still holding Yuqi's hand. Tang Feng tightened his grip on Yuqi's hand. He looked at Ji Bowen firmly and said seriously and sincerely, "Uncle Ji, I want to marry Yuqi. Please agree." Ji Bowen was stunned. Ji Yuqi was speechless. Ji Bowen coughed. "Tang Feng, do you know what you're saying?" "Uncle Ji, I'm serious. I want to marry Yuqi," Tang Feng said. He looked at Ji Yuqi with a gentle gaze. "I love her. I will love her for the rest of my life. So, please agree to let Yuqi marry me." Ji Bowen frowned slightly. He could tell that Tang Feng was telling the truth, but he had not forgotten what Yuqi had said. Yuqi said that she did not like Tang Feng. Of course, he could not treat her marriage as a joke. Ji Yuqi could tell that her father was in a difficult position. She quickly said, "Brother Tang Feng, I can't marry you." His burning heart was suddenly splashed with a bucket of cold water. His body stiffened, and his pupils constricted. "Why?" She bit her lip and met his gaze calmly. "Brother Tang Feng, I've always treated you as my brother." "Brother Tang Feng, I'm sorry." Tang Feng's face immediately darkened. His deep black eyes were surging with a violent storm. He squeezed a few words out of his teeth. "You like Gu Fifan?" She shook her head. "No." "Who is that?" His voice sounded like it came from his chest. It was low and carried a dull pain. Ji Yuqi pursed her lips. She did not want to push Xinjia out at this time, so she shook her head. "No one, Brother Tang Feng. It has nothing to do with anyone else." It had nothing to do with anyone else. It was just that she did not like him. Tang Feng's face was pale. He felt as if someone had stabbed a dagger into his heart. It was so painful that he was about to suffocate. Even if he clenched his fists, he could not suppress the bone-chilling pain. One wrong step led to many wrong steps. "Tang Feng, you pushed your baby out with your own hands. Now, she doesn't love you anymore." Outside the window, a bolt of lightning flashed across the sky. Thunder rumbled and raindrops the size of beans fell to the ground. Gradually, the raindrops became denser and denser, and soon formed a curtain of rain in front of the window. The summer rain came as it wished. The sky was terrifyingly dark, just like his mood at this time. Tang Feng pushed away the servant who was holding the umbrella and walked into the rain. The pouring rain soon drenched him. His wet black hair stuck to his forehead. Soon, his vision was blurred. The rain kept flowing down his cheeks. He touched the rain in front of his eyes, stepped on the puddles on the ground expressionlessly, and walked toward his car. Ji Yuqi stood outside the balcony and looked at the blurred back in the rain. She pinched her fingers into her palm and said softly, "Brother Tang Feng, don't blame me. It's better to end the pain quickly than to prolong the pain." Her heart was so small. She gave it all to Xinjia and could not give it to another man. The rain poured down until late at night. Outside the window, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The people in the house were haunted by nightmares. The spacious hallway was deathly silent. A ghostly figure drifted through the hallway. Ji Yuqi happily chased after him, loudly calling out, "Xinjia." He stiffly turned his head. On his jade-like handsome face, his eye sockets were dark, and 2 streams of blood flowed from the corners of his eyes. His voice was as dry as a withered plant's as he said, "Don't marry him. Come and see." Songshu 566. Chapter 869. The Eyes. I want to return the eyes to you. Ji Yuchi was drowning in despair, and she couldn't break free no matter how hard she tried. She suddenly woke up from the nightmare and sat up, gasping for air. Her whole body was drenched, as if she had been fished out of the water. Unknowingly, her cheeks were already covered in tears, and the tears mixed with sweat dripped down. She covered her face with both hands and cried bitterly. Her mournful cries echoed in the room, and mixed with the sound of the rain outside the window, it became even more desolate. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps broke the desolation. A black figure slowly walked over from the window. Ji Yuchi suddenly raised her head, her eyes still teary, and looked at the black figure warily. Her right hand quickly reached for the dagger under the pillow, and she said sternly, "Who are you?" The black figure stopped in his tracks, and was silent for a moment, and said gently, "Chi-Chi, don't be afraid, it's me." It was actually Gu Fifan. Ji Yuchi widened her eyes in disbelief, and quickly turned on the light. The soft light sprinkled in the room, and the man who was only 8 or 9 steps away from her was completely drenched. The wet hair on his forehead was stuck to his forehead, and the water droplets slid down his thin face and straight nose. His face was pale, and his eyes were deep, and his whole body exuded a decadent and embarrassed beauty. Every step he took, he left a puddle of water on the floor. She could imagine how badly he was drenched by the night rain. Ji Yuchi took the coat and put it on, wrapping herself up tightly, and looked at him with a frown. "What do you mean by breaking into my bedroom in the middle of the night?" She had really underestimated him. He could actually avoid the security system and break in without anyone noticing. Gu Fifan didn't answer, and he approached her step by step, his whole body exuding a cold aura. She subconsciously stepped back, and her frown deepened. "Gu Fifan, what do you—" Before she could finish her words, a pair of slender arms suddenly pulled her into an embrace. Her warm and soft body was pressed against his wet chest and his cold lips suddenly blocked her lips. He was like a wild beast, his actions were fierce and violent, as if he wanted to prove her existence, biting her over and over again. His arms were like an iron clamp around her waist, and her chest was squeezed so tightly that she almost couldn't breathe. She flew into a rage out of humiliation and bit his tongue. Her mouth was instantly filled with the taste of blood. She then forcefully punched his abdomen. He was in so much pain that he finally let go of her. Slap! A ruthless slap landed on his cheek. "Gu Fifan, you lunatic!" Ji Yuchi was so angry that his eyes were blazing. Because of this slap, Gu Fifan's pale cheeks became a little rosy. He stared at the little girl in front of him who had flown into a rage out of humiliation, and his thin lips curved into a bitter smile. "From the moment I fell in love with you, I went crazy." He was the eldest young master of the Gu family, and he was the Prince Charming pursued by countless women. However, he had fallen in love with this heartless woman. When he saw on the internet that she was in danger, his heart almost stopped beating. When he saw her crying in Shinja's arms, his eyes were filled with jealousy and anger. He finally knew that it wasn't that she didn't have a heart, but that she had given it all to Shinja. He really wanted to be the unrestrained eldest young master of the Gu family, who didn't show any mercy to any woman, but he couldn't control himself. He couldn't even wait until tomorrow to see her again. He braved the rain, climbed over her window, and barged into her bedroom like a lunatic. His arms tightened around her shoulders, and his eyes were burning with rage. He gritted his teeth and said, "You love Shinja, don't you? If he can do it, I can do it too. How am I worse than him? Why can't you love me?" He had been driven crazy by anger and jealousy, and his usual calmness and rationality had completely disappeared. Ji Yuchi suddenly realized that he really loved her, and he loved her so deeply. She didn't know how to deal with this situation, and could only try to ease his emotions. She quietly looked at his eyes and said gently, "Fifan, you're very good. Many girls like you. You'll definitely be able to find a girl who suits you better than me. I only want you." Gu Fifan was as domineering as a king, and the strong possessiveness in his eyes frightened her. She sighed helplessly in her heart. Fifan, can you be more rational? Her gaze was gentle and helpless, as if she was looking at an unreasonable child. Gu Fifan's chest was filled with a strong sense of annoyance, and there was a faint impulse in his heart that made him want to rush forward, press her under his body, and take her for himself. Because of this thought, the arm that was holding her trembled slightly. His deep eyes gradually turned red, and the imprisoned beast in his body was about to break out. Ji Yuqi's soft fingers gently covered the back of his hand, and she said gently, "Your clothes are all wet. I'll go get a set of my brother's clothes for you. Take a seat first." Her gentle voice was like a clear spring, and it instantly extinguished the evil fire in Gu Fifan's heart. He quickly retracted his hands from her shoulders, and felt guilty for having such thoughts. His sexy lips pursed, and his voice was hoarse. Okay. Although Ji Yunhan was already 1.7 meters tall, his clothes were still a little comical when worn by Gu Fifan, who was 1.8 meters tall. After changing his clothes and drying his hair, Gu Fifan seemed to have turned back into that suave young master. He glanced at Ji Yuqi, who had a strange expression on her face, and raised his eyebrows. "Laugh if you want, don't hold it in." Ji Yuqi burst out laughing. Afraid that he would be annoyed, she comforted him. "Actually, it's not that bad." Gu Fifan curved his lips, and suddenly strode towards her. Her eyes narrowed, and her right foot moved. This small vigilant action made him feel uncomfortable, and he stopped in his tracks, looking at her with deep eyes. "Protect yourself in the future, and don't use yourself as bait anymore. If you have any difficulties, feel free to look for me." Ji Yuqi was slightly stunned, and her lips quickly curved into a faint smile. Okay." He looked at her deeply, and his voice was deep. "I'm leaving, have a good rest." She felt as if a bottle of mixed feelings had been knocked over in her heart. She watched as he left through the window. Unknowingly, the rain had stopped, and a few bright stars appeared in the sky after the rain. That dark figure ran quickly on the balcony, and soon disappeared from the courtyard. The moon was bright, and the stars were sparse. The air was mixed with the fragrance of plants and flowers. It was quiet and lost, as if she had just had an unrealistic dream. For the next period of time, both Tang Feng and Gu Fifan disappeared from Ji Yuqi's life. She thought that they had given up, and she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Ing City Mental Hospital. A young man wearing glasses and wearing a white coat, with a fountain pen in his coat pocket, was meticulously leading two nurses on a ward round with his hands behind his back. A good-looking nurse opened the small window above the ward door, and looked at the man who was sitting by the bed in a daze. She said, "Dr. Ouyang, this is the patient that the police transferred here today. His name is Wang Wei, and he has a strong tendency to violence. The sulfuric acid incident that caused a sensation in Ing City a few days ago was committed by him." Ouyang Su nodded slightly, opened the door, and stared at Wang Wei expressionlessly. He said coldly, "Number 33, I'm your doctor in charge. From now on, please stay here and receive your treatment quietly." Wang Wei, who had been keeping his head down, suddenly raised his head and laughed foolishly. "I'm not mentally ill." Ouyang Su glanced at him indifferently, and then signaled the nurse to throw a blue and white hospital gown onto his bed. When the three of them turned to leave, Ouyang Su said indifferently, "Everyone who comes in has said the same thing. Remember, you're a mental patient here. Other than cooperating with the doctor, there's no other way. Otherwise, you'll go back to prison." Wang Wei's body stiffened. He thought that he had disguised himself well, but a complicated emotion quickly flashed through his confused eyes. He knew that Ouyang Su must have seen through his act of pretending to be ill. After all, there were a lot of patients like him in the mental hospital. In order to escape the punishment of the law, they pretended to be mentally ill. After being exposed by Ouyang Su, Wang Wei had been very nervous. He was worried that Ouyang Su would tell the police that he was pretending to be ill. But for the next few days, Ouyang Su treated him like an ordinary mental patient with an indifferent attitude. Only then did Wang Wei feel relieved. On the fourth day, Wang Wei went to the activity room to participate in the entertainment activities as usual. The so-called entertainment activities were actually watching TV, playing table tennis, or playing chess under the care of the nurse. Every time, he would sit in the corner and watch TV with his neck up. Although he didn't like the program that was being played every time, he still stared at the TV. If he had nothing to do and lived in a muddle-headed way, he might really go crazy. Ah, in the not-so-quiet activity room, a woman's painful scream suddenly rang out. The room was full of people, but no one seemed to have heard the scream that got louder and louder. Even the nurse stood in the same place with an indifferent face, motionless. The woman's scream echoed in his ears. Wang Wei stood up and looked for the source of the sound. When he stepped out of the activity room door, he saw in the corner of the stairs, two men in hospital gowns were humiliating a woman. One of the men held down the woman's arm, and the other man with a scar on his face was on top of the woman. He kept moving his waist, and the air was filled with an obscene atmosphere. His hands were still forcefully strangling the woman's neck. The woman's cries were getting weaker and weaker, and the strength of her struggle was getting weaker and weaker. She was like a fish on the verge of death, instinctively opening her mouth to breathe hard. Her dim eyes were wide open, and her eyeballs seemed to be about to jump out of their sockets. Coupled with her disfigured face, it was creepy to see her like this. Wang Wei's back was covered with a layer of cold sweat, and he unconsciously clenched his fingers. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded in his ears, "That woman is called Su Yanqing. You may have heard of her. A few months ago, she was still the big miss of the Black Flame sect." Attention, Songshu 566. Chapter 870. Wang Wei's throat tightened. Of course, he had heard of Su Yanqing's murder case. He liked to pay attention to current affairs, so how could he not have heard of it? He even saw her photo in the newspaper. She was a beautiful and proud woman. He didn't expect her to become like this. He turned his head in a daze and saw Ouyang Su standing beside him. He mumbled, "Aren't you going to save her?" Su Yanqing was about to be strangled to death. Ouyang Su's face was indifferent. He coldly said, "Su Yanqing once condoned her subordinates to rape more than 10 prostitutes. This is her retribution. Why should I save her?" Wang Wei was agitated. He suddenly shouted, "You're a doctor." Ouyang Su coldly stared at him. His gaze was as cold as a poisonous snake's. "I'm a doctor, so I'm only responsible for things within the scope of my job." Wang Wei clenched his teeth. The fake confusion in his eyes had completely disappeared, leaving only the flames of anger. He had accused Ouyang Su of being irresponsible, but he had never thought of rushing up to save Su Yanqing himself, because he was afraid of provoking those two lunatics. Ouyang Su seemed to have seen through his thoughts. He sneered and shook his head. He coldly said, "It seems that you haven't adapted to your identity." Wang Wei was startled. His tense body slowly relaxed. The anger in his eyes also quickly faded. Once again, he was at a loss. He no longer looked at Ouyang Su or Su Yanqing. He turned around and returned to the activity room. Ouyang Su pushed up his glasses to cover the coldness in his eyes. The corner of his lips curled up in a mocking smile. At this time, the man on top of Su Yanqing's body quickly moved. He reached his peak and finally let go of Su Yanqing's neck. Su Yanqing had already fainted. She was lying on the ground, allowing the other man to start a new round of abuse. Ouyang Su looked away as if he saw something dirty. He waved his hand and called 2 nurses. They pulled the 2 men away and sent Su Yanqing back to the ward. After all, their purpose was not to let her die easily, but to let her live in pain. In front of the hospital building, there was a garden with green trees and fragrant flowers. Every day, Wang Wei would wander around here for a while. He liked to sit on a bench under the shade of a tree and stare at the tall courtyard wall, imagining what his eldest daughter and youngest son were doing right now. A tall and straight figure quietly stood beside him. His handsome face, which seemed to be carved out of ice and snow, exuded a chilling aura. He coldly said, "Someone once committed suicide by jumping off a building from the 6th floor. His brain was ruptured and his flesh was badly mangled. His corpse is lying right in front of where you are sitting." Wang Wei suddenly felt a chill all over his body. He couldn't help but imagine a bloody scene. He seemed to see that person lying at his feet. He panicked and retracted his feet, but immediately straightened his body to hide his fear. Ouyang Su's deep and serene eyes stared ahead as he lightly said, "That man is the son of an official. He raped and killed a 17-year-old girl. In order to escape the punishment of the law, his father used his connections to forge a medical record and sent him here. In the beginning, his life was very relaxed. Later on, he really had a mental problem. He suffered from persecutory paranoia. He always suspected that someone was out to harm him. He even said that the girl's ghost had returned to take his life. Finally, one day, he went completely crazy and jumped from the 6th floor. It was said that before he jumped, he even shouted, 'I'll return you my life, I'll return it to you.'" He casually recounted the story as if he was talking about the weather. However, Wang Wei felt his hair stand on end and goosebumps appeared on his skin. He was originally an atheist, but when he heard this story, his mind couldn't help but imagine the scene of a ghost taking his life. His heart felt waves of fear. Wang Wei forcefully shook his head and cast aside those wild thoughts. He clenched his fists and angrily said, "Dr. Ouyang, what are you trying to do?" Ouyang Su looked at him expressionlessly. His tone was calm. "Chatting and telling stories. This is a new treatment method I created." Wang Wei tried hard to suppress the anger in his heart. "I don't need this kind of treatment." After shouting, he ran away in a sorry state. Ouyang Su's cold voice came from behind him. "I'm your attending doctor. You must follow my treatment plan. Of course, you can also choose to return to prison." Wang Wei's back stiffened for a second. Then, he walked away without looking back. The next day, Ouyang Su did his usual ward rounds. He put his hands in the pockets of his white coat and indifferently looked at Wang Wei who was lying on the bed. He lightly said, "The patient who used to live here was a young girl in her early 20s, Wang Wei irritably covered his ears. The storytelling treatment had begun again. However, that cold voice still stubbornly drilled into his ears. That girl's father was very rich. He also spoiled her a lot, causing her to develop an arrogant and domineering personality. She and her friends raced and killed a couple. After the hit and run, her father found someone to take the blame for her and settled the matter. After that, she didn't repent at all. Instead, she went from bad to worse. She and her friends kidnapped a poor girl and tortured her to death. The reason was that the poor girl had taught her a lesson. After the murder, the girl's father sent her to this hospital in order to save her life. The girl's personality was irritable and she was not popular. Gradually, a group of people bullied her. She began to shrink back and become paranoid. She didn't dare to leave the ward. Every day, when she closed her eyes, she would have nightmares. She dreamed of the girl she tortured to death and the couple she killed. Later, she had a mental breakdown. She snatched the fountain pen from my pocket and used it to pierce her own throat. Blood sprayed everywhere. Even the ceiling was dyed red. Ouyang Su's voice suddenly became gloomy and cold. It was like a bone-piercing cold wind, chilling to the bone. After the girl died, her parents disliked her and were even unwilling to collect her body. They entrusted us to bury her. You see, human emotions are very weak. Even those who love you deeply at first will fear you because of your blood-stained hands. They will hate you and eventually abandon you. Don't say any more, don't say any more. Wang Wei couldn't stand it anymore. He hugged his head and shouted manically. No, what Ouyang Su said was wrong. His children would never dislike him. They would never hate him. The one they loved the most was their father. Ouyang Su's lips curled up coldly. He said in a deep voice, "Little Wang, the patient's mania is acting up. Bring me a tranquilizer. After the nurse who was guarding outside the ward heard this, she immediately took out a syringe from her pocket. The syringe was already half filled with a transparent liquid. Wang Wei subconsciously retreated. He angrily and frantically shouted, "Don't come over. I'm normal. I don't need a tranquilizer." Ouyang Su sneered, "All patients don't like injections. Little Wang, give me the syringe." He stretched out his right hand. The nurse obediently placed the syringe in his hand. He held the syringe and strode over. Before Wang Wei could see his movements clearly, Ouyang Su had already grabbed his arm. He lifted the syringe and the liquid in the syringe was slowly injected into his body. The drug's effect was very fast. In just a few seconds, he felt his eyelids grow heavy. He wanted to sleep. He forced himself to open his eyes and stared at Ouyang Su. Ouyang Su said indifferently, "Little Wang, prepare for the operation." "Yes," little Wang responded and quickly left. Wang Wei bit the tip of his tongue. The sharp pain allowed his mind to regain a trace of clarity. He watched helplessly as he was pushed into the operating room. The snow-white walls, the snow-white sheets, and the unpleasant smell of medicine made him panic. What do you want to do?" Wang Wei stared at Ouyang Su and squeezed out a few words. Ouyang Su put on a pair of rubber gloves and held a shiny scalpel in his hand. He approached him step by step and said in a calm tone, "In 1949, the psychiatrist Moniz, who won the Nobel Prize in Medicine, invented an operation. The full name is bilateral prefrontal lobe lobotomy. It can reduce the impulsive and aggressive behavior of patients with mania and make them docile. Oh, of course, there are side effects. It will make you lose your memory and many functions. To be precise, you'll be no different from a walking corpse." As he spoke, he stroked Wang Wei's head as if he was looking for a place to cut. He calmly said, "As long as the scalp is cut open, the skull is opened, and the prefrontal lobe is removed. The brain itself has no sensory neurons, so you won't feel any pain. When you wake up from your sleep, you'll forget all those troublesome things. What a wonderful thing that would be." His fingers stroked Wang Wei's head as if he was stroking a fine piece of art. His low voice slowly sounded, but it made Wang Wei extremely afraid. His legs trembled, his eyes widened in horror, and his lips trembled. No, I don't want to do the operation." The cold scalpel gently rubbed against his head. Ouyang Su's voice was like the devil's voice from hell, cruel and cold-blooded. "Do you think that when you walk into this hospital, into my operating room, you can still do whatever you want?" Ouyang Su was like a devil who killed without spilling blood, using words to disturb people's minds. Wang Wei was terrified to the extreme, and even the tranquilizer couldn't control him. His hands tightly grasped the bedsheet, and he crazily roared, "Let me go, please let me go, I can give you anything you want." Ouyang Su raised his eyebrows. "You're just a toy in my hands, what else can you give me?" Wang Wei's body stiffened, but he quickly said anxiously, Money, I can give you money." Ouyang Su sneered, "I heard that you're bankrupt. How much money can you have? Keep the money and buy yourself a coffin." Yes, I have a lot of money." Wang Wei seemed to realize that there was a problem with this sentence, so he quickly changed his words. "As long as you let me go, I can give you 100,000. 100,000, for an ordinary doctor, was already very tempting. However, Ouyang Su didn't put it in his eyes at all. His tone was indifferent. "Sorry, compared to 100,000, I'm more interested in your brain." Losing his memory, losing his personality, and losing the ability to think, all of these made Wang Wei feel terrified. He didn't want to be a walking corpse, he had to find a way to escape from this terrifying mental hospital. He clenched his fists and eagerly negotiated with Ouyang Su. 200,000, I'll give you 200,000. Ouyang Su patted his forehead with the scalpel and lightly said, 200,000, it's enough for you to change a kidney and live for 10 more years. Removing the frontal lobe will only make you lose the ability to think. It's good to be alive, why waste money? Wang Wei's eyes widened in shock. How did you know? Know what? Know that you have uremia and only have 5 years to live? Or know that you were actually bribed, and in order to leave 300,000 for the child, you poured sulfuric acid? Come and see. Songshu 566. Chapter 871. You know everything. Who the hell are you? Wang Wei's back was drenched in cold sweat. He looked up at the man standing beside him. He was dressed in white, and his handsome face was expressionless. He was like an ice sculpture, and his whole body was permeated with coldness. Ouyang Su's lips curved into a sly smile. I know everything about every prisoner who enters the hospital. Prisoners are prisoners. Even if they escape the punishment of the law, they can't escape my punishment. His words were like a sharp sword, ruthlessly stabbing into Wang Wei's heart. Wang Wei's eyes widened in horror, and his body couldn't help but tremble. His mind couldn't help but recall the story he once told. In a flash, he suddenly understood something. He struggled to move his body to the other side of the operating bed and shouted, "It's you. The one who jumped off the building, and the one who committed suicide with a pen, they were all killed by you. Well, not bad. You're smart. I'm a psychiatrist, and I'm very good at messing with their minds and making them collapse. In fact, the case I'm most proud of was punishing a perverted ogre. He not only raped and killed a girl, but also dismembered her body to stew soup. Later, he bit off his own wrist and swallowed it mouthful by mouthful. He bled to death. Don't you think it's very interesting? Pervert, devil, stay away from me." Perhaps it was because of extreme panic, or perhaps because the drug's effect had worn off, but Wang Wei's hands and feet were able to move. He turned over and jumped out of the bed, running like the wind toward the door. Ouyang Su smiled coldly. He slightly raised his right hand, and the scalpel in his hand flew over Wang Wei's head and heavily inserted into the door. Wang Wei stopped in shock. He only felt a chill on his scalp. He reached out to touch it, and a handful of hair fell down. If Ouyang Su had thrown the scalpel a little lower, half of his head would have been cut off. Wang Wei was so scared that his legs went soft and he couldn't stop trembling. The door was only a few steps away from him, but he couldn't walk over. The sound of footsteps came closer and closer. The tall white figure was getting closer and closer. The gloomy voice sounded like it came from hell. "Run, why don't you run?" Wang Wei fell to the ground. He knelt on the ground with his hands on the ground and cried bitterly. "I beg you, let me go. I didn't mean it, I really didn't mean it. I just wanted to leave a sum of money for my child before I die. I was wrong, I shouldn't have harmed others. I know I was wrong, please forgive me." Ouyang Su pulled the scalpel from the door, casually played with it, and lightly said, "Who ordered you?" "I don't know. It was a man who contacted me. I don't even know how he found me." Wang Wei said incoherently. The man was very tall. When he saw me, he was wearing a black coat and black sunglasses. He gave me a sum of money and a bottle of sulfuric acid. He said that after the mission was completed, he would give me another 200,000 yuan. Before he left, he gave me a photo of Ji Yuqi. He said that he would tell me the time and place of the operation. And I don't know anything else. Ouyang Su took out a photo from his pocket and put it in front of him. "Is it this man?" "Yes, yes, yes. It's him. He also said that I won't go to jail because of this. He'll find a way to arrange for me to be sent to a mental hospital. I can live comfortably for the next 5 years, and he'll arrange for my children to visit me." Wang Wei seemed to be showing his loyalty, and he told him all the details he knew. Ouyang Su looked away and said, "Did he mention the title of Mrs. Ji?" Wang Wei thought for a bit and shook his head. "No." Ouyang Su's face was cold as he said with certainty, "He did. You heard him mention it when he was on the phone." Wang Wei nodded. "Yes, yes, yes. I heard it. I definitely heard it." Ouyang Su curled his lips. "Very good. You know what to say in court, right? I know, I know. Law. Court. What? Do you want to stay here and have your head cut by me, or pierce your throat with a pen, or jump off a building to commit suicide? No, no, no. I'd rather go to jail. Wang Wei's tense muscles relaxed. He had finally escaped from the devil. Ouyang Su sneered. It's good that you understand. You won't have a good ending if you fall into my hands. Wang Wei desperately nodded his head, indicating that he understood. His flattery was obvious. Ouyang Su stared at him coldly. If anyone finds out about me, I can guarantee that your daughter and son will be sent to a mental hospital for the rest of their lives. I didn't hear or see anything. Please don't hurt my children. As long as he escaped, and as long as the children were safe, Wang Wei wouldn't be stupid enough to run into his gun again. It had nothing to do with him how he dealt with the criminals who deserved it. Ouyang Su lifted his chin. I'm very satisfied that you know what's good for you. You can go out and return to your ward. Remember, don't wander around. If something happens, I can't save you. Wang Wei quickly nodded. He opened the door and carefully walked out. After confirming that the other party wouldn't make things difficult for him, he ran away. The whole corridor echoed with his hurried and panicked footsteps. Ouyang Su closed the door of the operating room, turned around, faced the white curtain, and lightly said, "You can come out now." A woman wearing jeans, a black t-shirt, and black sunglasses slowly walked out from behind the curtain. She chuckled softly and said, as expected of the devil doctor, "You're really good at breaking people's psychological defenses. You flatter me." Ouyang Su lightly glanced at her and handed her the photo in his hand. "This is the photo you gave me. Today, I'll inform the police and tell them that Wang Wei is pretending to be crazy. I think he'll be transferred back to prison soon." "Thank you." Ji Yuqi took the photo. The person in the photo was Xie Bing. He was wearing a black suit and sunglasses. It turned out that Chen Tingfang had bribed Wang Wei through him. Chen Tingfang, this woman, did things flawlessly. If he didn't find a breakthrough from Wang Wei and dragged her into the water, it would be difficult to catch her fox tail. Ouyang Su didn't look at her. He slowly took off the rubber gloves on his hands. He had a pair of beautiful hands. His white and slender fingers were naturally an artist's hands. However, they were stained with a lot of blood. Ji Yuqi suddenly felt a little regretful. She pondered for a moment and slowly said, "Ouyang, put down the burden and be yourself. You'll be an excellent psychiatrist." Ouyang Su's movements stiffened, but he quickly continued. The pause was very short. If Ji Yuqi hadn't been watching him, she wouldn't have noticed. His voice was very calm. "You know too much." From the moment she came to him and asked him to treat Su Yanqing specially and deliberately target Wang Wei, he knew that this woman understood him and knew his background. Ji Yuqi looked at him seriously. "We're the same kind of people. Hatred made us give up on kindness and correct morals. Therefore, I treat you as a friend. I don't want to see you fall into a desperate situation." Ouyang Su raised his head and looked at her beautiful eyes. In her eyes, he saw his ugly self. He also hated that self. However, once something started, there was no turning back. His expression slightly changed and he muttered, "Perhaps on that day, everything will end. It might not be a bad thing." Ji Yuqi shook her head and said in a slightly anxious tone, "You don't understand. Your reputation will be ruined, you'll go to jail, and even pay with your life." Ouyang Su's eyes were blank. So what? Death was the best way to end evil. He had used this method to end the evil lives of many people. Ji Yuqi felt sad. He had wanted to stop his actions long ago, but he couldn't control himself. Therefore, he wanted to be stopped by others. He had long hated life. She didn't know how to persuade him. Her legs uncontrollably walked in front of him and her fingers gently rested on the back of his hand. He numbly allowed her to grab his hand and looked at her calmly. She slowly bloomed a smile and said softly, "Actually, this world is still very beautiful. Although I have hatred in my heart, I also have people I want to protect. I also have people who love me. For them, no matter how difficult it is, I have to live on. Oh Yang, you will definitely have such a person too. Oh Yang, you're not a god. You can't punish all evil on behalf of the law. You're a human. You'll feel pain, loneliness, and love. Being a person who can cry and laugh is much better than being a god who has no desires." Her voice was gentle and her gaze was clear. It was like a spring breeze that caressed one's face, making one unable to help but sink into it. She lowered her eyes slightly and looked at their overlapping hands. She smiled and said, "Do you feel it? The warmth from a friend?" Her fingertips were cold at first, but after their skin touched for a while, they gradually warmed up. The warmth from her palm was also transmitted to his body. It was like a warm current flowing into his cold heart. He suddenly felt irritated, as if he had been seen through. He flung her hand away and used sharp words to protect himself. "Since you want me to help you, why do you have to be so pretentious?" "Yes, that's why I'm very despicable. I want to use you to achieve my goal, but I also want to persuade you. Actually, you can be as despicable as me. I believe that you have 100 ways to make those criminals who pretend to be crazy admit their sins. Since that's the case, why do you have to harm their lives? Isn't it best for them to go back to prison for the rest of their lives?" She was still smiling, so calm that it made him pale in comparison. He suddenly felt that what she said was very reasonable. He was not a god and could not punish all the sinners, but he could use his ability to make those sinners wake up and receive the punishment they deserved. His expression was still cold, but there was already a fluctuation in his eyes. Ji Yuqi knew that her words had already aroused his interest, so she did not say anything more. When she turned to leave, her back was facing him. She said one last sentence, "Oh Yang, actually, there has always been a person who loves you by your side. If it wasn't because she loves you, she wouldn't have hidden your actions. The pressure and pain she has endured is no less than yours. I think you've noticed it yourself. Cherish her well and don't let yourself regret it." After saying that, Ji Yuqi directly opened the door. A delicate and pretty nurse was standing at the door. When she saw her come out, the nurse politely smiled. Ji Yuqi also smiled at her and said softly, "Little Wang, don't give up on Ouyang. You might be the only sunshine in his life." Ad. Songshu 566. Chapter 872. Little Wang's eyes widened in shock, and her cheeks quickly turned red. Ji Yuqi smiled and walked away under her astonished gaze. Ouyang Su, known as the Devil Doctor, was arrested by the police 3 years later on suspicion of murder. The Devil Doctor was the nickname given to him by the media at that time. Little Wang, the nurse, was also arrested at that time. She was suspected of covering up for him. She knew that Ouyang Su used professional skills to induce patients to commit suicide, but she hid it for him for 6 years. At that time, the media speculated that Little Wang was forced. However, Ji Yuqi felt that it was because of love. Only love could be so tolerant. Ji Yuqi had been shocked when she'd first seen the case. Ouyang Su seemed ruthless, but he was very emotional. At that time, his sister was raped and killed by the son of an official. The son of an official took advantage of a loophole in the law and falsified medical records, pretending to be mentally ill and was admitted to a mental hospital. In order to avenge his sister, he worked hard for 3 years before he entered the hospital. Step by step, he drove the son of an official crazy and to his death. Since then, Ouyang Su saw through the darkness of society and embarked on the path of punishing criminals who pretended to be mentally ill. The first story he told Wang Wei was that the son of an official who jumped off the building was actually the person who killed his sister. Ouyang Su killed more than 10 people and was finally sentenced to death. Little Wang was also sentenced to 2 years in prison for covering up for him. After his matter was exposed, it caused a huge social reaction. Some people even called for him not to be sentenced to death because everyone who died in his hands deserved it. He had never hurt the innocent. However, the law was ruthless, and he was punished by the law in the end. Ji-Yuchi sympathized with him and felt that it was not worth it for him. So, she spoke out rashly to change his tragic ending. Facing the bright sun, she walked out of the mental hospital and stopped to look at the blue sky. A faint smile rose on her lips. She hoped that her words would have an effect. 3 years later, Ouyang Su became a famous criminal psychologist in the country. When he used his knowledge to solve several major cases, he was hired as a police psychologist to participate in the investigation of major cases, which caused a wave of criminal psychology. In the same year, he married Little Wang and invited Ji-Yuchi and her husband to attend the wedding. During the toast, he specially gave a toast to Ji-Yuchi to thank her for guiding him in the right direction, which caused Shinja to be jealous. This is a story for later, so let's not talk about it for now. Soon, the media revealed that Wang Wei was pretending to be mentally ill. Ji-Yuchi filed a lawsuit against Wang with Ji Bowen's full support. Before the trial started, Chen Tingfang was already anxious. She was worried that Wang Wei would confess the truth. She wanted to visit him in prison to calm him down, but it wasn't convenient for her to appear. Wang Wei had met Xia Bing before, so she couldn't let Xia Bing appear either. After thinking about it, she thought of Wang Wei's ex-wife, Jiang Ling. She planned to use Jiang Ling to threaten Wang Wei. Who would have thought that by the time Xia Bing arrived at Jiang Ling's residence, Jiang Ling had already escaped with Wang Wei's 2 children. Chen Tingfang was so anxious that her mouth was bubbling. But there was nothing she could do and she could only resign herself to fate. Xia Bing was even more anxious than her. After all, he was the one who contacted Wang Wei. Although he wore sunglasses and disguised himself, what if Ji-Yuchi was already prepared and found him? He was even prepared to assassinate Wang Wei. If Wang Wei dared to expose him, then he would kill Wang Wei through his connections in the prison. But he didn't expect that Shinja was already prepared. Through his connections, he arranged for Wang Wei to be in a separate room and guarded 24 hours a day. Except for the director's approval, no one could come in contact with him. Just as everyone was either sad or happy, nervous or expectant, the first trial started. During the trial, Wang Wei confessed to the fact that he pretended to be mentally ill. During the further trial, he admitted that he was ordered by someone to try to hurt Ji-Yuchi with sulfuric acid. Before the trial, Wang Wei's lawyer picked up a few portraits and presented them to the judges. Then, he picked up a portrait and said to the audience, "Judges, presiding judge, the portrait in your hands is based on Wang Wei's description of the person who bribed him. Based on this portrait, we investigated one by one and finally locked onto the target. He is the driver of the Ji family, Xia Bing. Now, I implore you to let Xia Bing appear in court." Xia Bing was brought to court. Of course, he wouldn't admit that he hired someone to kill Wang Wei. At this time, Wang Wei suddenly said, "That day, you found me in my rented apartment and said that you wanted to talk about business. After you left, I found a strand of hair on the sofa. Just in case, I kept that strand of hair. I was afraid that you wouldn't admit it in the end." Xia Bing's pupils suddenly shrank. He knew that he was completely screwed. After the judge warned Wang Wei for his sudden interruption, he said, "The defendant's lawyer, please present evidence to prove that the defendant was ordered to commit the crime." The lawyer took out 2 DNA analysis reports. After the DNA analysis, the hair left by Wang Wei is a complete match with Xia Bing's DNA. It's enough to prove that Xia Bing hired someone to kill Wang Wei. Who knows where Wang Wei got that strand of hair? Maybe he was already prepared to frame me. Xia Bing's face darkened as he tried to argue. The lawyer was already well prepared. He presented evidence to prove that Wang Wei and Xia Bing had no relationship, and there was no reason to frame him. Then, he invited a few witnesses. These people lived in the same building as Wang Wei, and they all said that they saw Xia Bing enter and leave the building wearing sunglasses. Ji-Yuchi watched coldly as the lawyer forced Xia Bing into a corner step by step. In fact, the so-called evidence, the hair, and the eyewitnesses were all arranged by her long ago. Xia Bing was too meticulous and didn't leave behind any evidence that could be used against him. Unfortunately, he didn't know and had no way to prove his innocence. In the end, Xia Bing committed the crime of intentional injury for hiring someone to kill Wang Wei and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Although Wang Wei was counted as an accomplice, he was the one who committed the crime. Later, he pretended to be mentally ill and tried to escape the law, so the circumstances were serious and he was sentenced to 3 years in prison. After the criminal was escorted out of the court, the reporters swarmed over. After all, this case was complicated and confusing, and it involved the eldest daughter of the Ji family and the eldest young master of the Shin family. One could imagine how much attention there was. On the way to the prison van, Wang Wei suddenly turned to look at Xia Bing and asked curiously, "Xia Bing, you were just ordered by someone, weren't you? I overheard you calling the other party Mrs. Ji on the phone that day. You were following Mrs. Ji's orders to hurt Miss Ji, right? But I'm curious, why didn't you accuse her in court?" His voice was neither loud nor soft, just enough for the reporters to hear clearly. Thus, it immediately caused a commotion. The reporters tried to squeeze into the encirclement and raised their microphones to ask, "Mr. Xia Bing, did you really listen to Mrs. Ji's orders and hire someone to hurt someone? Rumor has it that Mrs. Ji and Miss Ji don't get along. Is that true? Why did Mrs. Ji hire someone to hurt someone? Is it to fight for the Ji family's assets? Mr. Xia Bing, what's your relationship with Mrs. Ji? Why are you protecting her?" Questions and doubts swarmed in, and Xia Bing's face was terrifyingly gloomy. He wanted to punch Wang Wei. He had never talked to Chen Tingfang on the phone in front of Wang Wei. Wang Wei did it on purpose. He wanted to drag Chen Tingfang into it. Xia Bing chose to keep quiet in the face of the media. The police stretched out their arms to block the reporters and said, "Please make way, don't push." Under the police's obstruction, they finally got into the prison van safely. Xia Bing was furious as he looked at the crowd outside through the glass. If he had known that Chen Tingfang was so troublesome, he wouldn't have taken her job even if it meant offending Lu Jianfeng. After 2 years in prison, the world would have been turned upside down by the time he got out. There would be no one like him in the underworld. Xia Bing hit the car with his head angrily, which immediately attracted a warning from the police. He leaned against the car gloomily, feeling useless. Because of Wang Wei's words, Chen Tingfang became famous. She was ranked first on the list of the most vicious stepmothers in the rich families. Many secrets were gossiped about, such as how she often abused Ji Yuqi and her brother at home, how she bribed people to kidnap Ji Yunhan, how she hired people to hurt Ji Yuqi, and so on. She became a joke in the upper-class women's circle. Even the upper-class women who used to be close to her would tease her, saying things like, "If you want to do it cleanly and don't leave any evidence behind," or, instead of targeting the siblings, "Why don't you give birth to a son and stabilize your position?" Chen Tingfang was so angry that she vomited blood. Ji Yuqi watched on calmly, expressing that she was enjoying the show. Of course, she was the one who had come up with the most vicious stepmother ranking. Moreover, it had been quoted by the tabloid entertainment magazines and newspapers, and its sales for that period had skyrocketed. Ji Bowen flew into a rage. In front of the whole family, he did not give Chen Tingfang any face and reprimanded her. Chen Tingfang sobbed and pretended to be innocent. "Bowen, that Wang Wei is obviously framing me. Why do you believe a murderer and not me? He doesn't even know you. Why would he frame you?" Ji Bowen threw the newspaper in front of her and said angrily, "Also, how do you explain these things?" Chen Tingfang wiped her tears and said, "Those media are best at catching wind and making groundless accusations. It's not like you don't know. What secrets of the rich families, what scandals of the rich and powerful. Isn't it just to attract everyone's attention?" Ji Bowen was furious, and interrupted her, "If you really didn't do it, how could they write such a thing with a nose and eyes? Medicine? Good for you, Chen Tingfang. How could you treat Ah Han so cruelly? As his father, I was kept in the dark all this time. Welfare, Hungcha 866. Chapter 873. The more he spoke, the angrier he got. He didn't give Chen Tingfang a chance to defend herself and shouted at Ji Yunhan, "Ahan, tell me, what happened with the drugs?" Ji Yunhan scratched his head and said uncomfortably, "Dad, don't be angry. That incident happened a long time ago. Previously, I met a few friends in the underworld and they drugged my drink. If I didn't wake up, I would have been injected with drugs. I beat those people up and then escaped. That's all." He made up a bunch of nonsense and hid most of the truth. Anyway, Chen Tingfang didn't dare to jump out and expose him. Chen Tingfang quickly said, "Bowen, I really didn't do that. I've always treated Ahan as my own son. How could he do such a vicious thing?" Ji Yunhan pursed his lips and said coldly, "Suzhou was the one who did that. I'm curious why Suzhou would target me. Su Yanqing is Suzhou's sister. That woman even planted a bomb under his sister's car. I really don't know why the siblings are always going against the Ji family." Ji Bowen also knew about the bomb, but he didn't think too much about it at the time. Now that he thought about what had happened to his son, his face instantly turned ugly. A thought gradually formed in his mind. He suddenly raised his head and stared at Chen Tingfang gloomily. "Your ex-husband, Yi Zhaoxian, was once Su Yanqing's lover. Why was he tortured to death by Su Yanqing? Could it be that he did something behind Su Yanqing's back?" Chen Tingfang didn't expect Ji Bowen to be so smart and be able to guess the truth. She secretly clenched her fists, but her face was still wet with tears. She sobbed, "After I divorced Yi Zhaoxian, I never saw him again. Bowen, do you hate me that much? How could you suspect my relationship with him? I'm dead." As she spoke, she covered her face with a handkerchief and cried in despair. Seeing her heartbroken appearance, Ji Bowen also felt bad. So many things had happened at home, and the children had encountered so many dangers, but he actually didn't know. And the evidence pointed to his wife, indicating that she was the culprit. All of this made his head hurt even more and his heart hurt even more. Ji Bowen's face was gloomy and he frowned in deep thought. Ji Yuqi and her brother didn't speak. Only Chen Tingfang's sobs could be heard in the living room. The atmosphere in the living room was suffocating. Just then, a clear and pleasant voice drifted over. "Mom, Uncle Ji, we're back." When Chen Tingfang heard her daughter's voice, she quickly stopped sobbing and wiped away her tears. Just then, Yi Zhisu held onto Jiang Tianhao's arm and quickly walked into the living room. Behind them was a servant who was holding bags of various sizes. It was obvious that the two of them had a pleasant honeymoon trip. Their faces were rosy and they were in high spirits. Yi Zhisu's brows carried the unique charm of a newly married woman. When they got closer, they realized that the atmosphere wasn't right. Yi Zhisu let go of Jiang Tianhao's arm and quickly walked over to Chen Tingfang. Her face was full of worry. "Mom, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" Chen Tingfang secretly pinched the back of her hand and smiled. "I'm fine." "Zhisu, Tianhao, did your trip go well?" Yi Zhisu received her hint and didn't ask any further. She giggled and said, "It went very well. We went to a lot of fun places." "That's right, mother-in-law. You don't know this, but Zhisu had so much fun that she didn't want to come back." Jiang Tianhao was still as handsome and gentle as ever. He laughed and teased to liven up the atmosphere. Then he turned to Ji Bowen and said with a smile, "Father-in-law, wherever we go, Zhisu will collect interesting local trinkets and bring them to you. She hopes that you can forgive her for being insensible in the past." Yi Zhisu pouted cutely. She tugged at his arm and shook it. "Hey, you were the one who said that. Why are you pushing the blame onto me? Uncle Ji, you mustn't believe what he said. He collected all those trinkets. I also said that Uncle Ji wouldn't like those childish things. Guess what he said? He said that you don't lack anything but some interesting trinkets, Uncle Ji." The husband and wife echoed each other and deliberately said some funny things. No matter how angry Ji Bowen was, he couldn't lose his temper. It was rare for the family to be reunited. He changed his expression and said to them in a rare kind tone, "Since you've prepared small gifts, why don't you take them out for me to see?" Jiang Tianhao patted the back of Yizisu's hand and smiled brightly. "Hurry up. Father-in-law has already said that if the gifts don't satisfy him, be careful that he won't give us food to eat." Yizisu stuck out her tongue playfully. She ran to the pile of bags and rummaged through them. Jiang Tianhao naturally sat across from Ji Bowen and chatted about the interesting things that happened during their trip. Ji Yuqi also chatted with him. The atmosphere became more harmonious. Ji Bowen nodded in satisfaction. He thought that after Jiang Tianhao and Yizisu got married, Jiang Tianhao was much more sensible than before. "This is for Uncle Ji. Uncle Ji, these are all local trinkets. Please don't dislike them. Otherwise, we won't be able to eat lunch." Yizisu held a beautifully wrapped big box in front of Ji Bowen and joked playfully. Ji Bowen smiled and said, "Let me see what it is first." He opened the box and saw that it was filled with handicrafts or works of art. There was a ceramic snuff bottle, a set of stamps from 1956 to 2004, a Balinese wooden statue of a goddess, and so on. Although they weren't expensive, they were quite interesting. It was obvious that the two of them had put in some effort. Ji Bowen was still very satisfied. The gift that the couple gave to Chen Tingfang was a very Greek-style jewelry necklace. As soon as she took it out of the jewelry box, she felt that it was dazzling and very charming. The gift for Ji Yuqi was a forget-worry bead made of black agate. Yizisu affectionately tied it around her wrist and said with a smile, "Sister Chichi, it is said that forget-worry beads can bring beautiful blessings to people. I wish that you will forget your troubles and sadness and will always be so beautiful." Ji Yuqi lowered her eyes and looked at the forget-worry bead on her wrist. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Thank you, Zisu. I also wish you and Tianhao a happy life." Yizisu smiled sweetly. "Thank you, Sister Chichi. We will definitely be happy." Hearing Yuqi's blessing, Jiang Tianhao felt very uncomfortable. Had she forgotten about him so quickly? It was obvious that he had forgotten his current identity. The way he looked at Ji Yuqi became complicated. Fortunately, Yizisu suddenly said, "Of course, we can't forget Ahan's gift. Ahan, this is your gift. Quickly open it and see if you like it." Ji Yunhan looked up and revealed a bright smile. "Thank you, second sister, second brother-in-law." Yizisu's hand that was holding the gift box trembled. This little rascal had always been rude to her and had never called her second sister. He was acting strangely. He must be up to something again. Her eyes moved slightly and her smile was even brighter than his. She handed the box to him and said sweetly, "Don't be so polite. We are siblings. Quickly, open it and see." Opening the beautifully packaged box, there was a Patek Philippe watch inside. My Gigai, Yizisu was quite generous. Ji Yunhan was secretly speechless, but he quickly understood that one could not trap a wolf without sacrificing a child. Their sacrifice now was equivalent to their return tomorrow. His father would definitely compensate them. Attention, Songshu 566. Chapter 874. Sure enough, Ji Bowen saw the expensive watch and frowned. "You two just got married. Don't be too extravagant." Jiang Tianhao stopped smiling and said seriously, "How can I be stingy with my family? However, we will do what we can in the future. Please don't worry, father-in-law." Ji Bowen nodded in satisfaction. "Quit your original job and rest for 2 days. Then report to the company. I want you to train in the marketing department. What do you think?" Jiang Tianhao hurriedly said, "Father-in-law's arrangement is very good. I also plan to train in the marketing department. Please don't worry. I won't let you down." "Very good. You two must be tired. Go upstairs and rest. Don't go back tonight. Stay here for dinner." After Ji Bowen finished speaking, he glanced at Chen Tingfang. Tingfang, come with me to the study. Chen Tingfang knew that she couldn't avoid it today. She didn't want her daughter and son-in-law to see that something was wrong. She smiled and agreed. Then, she instructed the kitchen to make a few dishes that her daughter and son-in-law liked. Then, she went upstairs to the study. Ji Bowen sat behind the desk with a cigarette in his hand. He hadn't smoked in a long time. He would only smoke when he was troubled. Chen Tingfang looked down and walked behind him in an extremely gentle manner. She massaged his shoulders and said softly, "Bowen, you still don't believe me?" Ji Bowen's face was gloomy and his voice was hoarse. "The evidence is right there. How do you want me to believe you?" She said aggrievedly, "What kind of evidence is that?" "It's just the media's wild guesses. I've been with you for so many years. Don't you know my character?" Ji Bowen pinched the space between his eyebrows with a headache. Some time ago, Chen Tingfang had indeed done many inappropriate things, and there were indeed many suspicious points about her that made him suspicious. But after all, feelings prevailed. He was unwilling to believe that the simple and cute girl from back then had now become a vicious woman. But this time, he was really angry. His son and daughter were hurt, but they hid it from him and refused to tell him. Did they think that he didn't have the ability to protect them? His wife was his family, and so were his children. In fact, his children were even more important in his heart. If Ting Fang was really ambitious and dared to harm his children, he would definitely choose to stand on their side. After making up his mind, his gaze became firm and cold. He turned his head and stared at Chen Tingfang. In a deep voice, he said, "If I find out that you really did these things, I won't care about our past relationship. Tingfang, don't disappoint me again. I'm a man of my word." The cold glint in his eyes was like a sharp sword that mercilessly pierced her heart. Her eyes reddened and tears fell uncontrollably. "I've always known that in your heart, I can't compare to Yu Qi and her brother. That's why I've always known my place. I didn't want you to hate me." Even though she was getting on in years, her appearance was still very good. When she cried, she looked so pitiful that people couldn't help but want to take pity on her. However, Ji Bowen wasn't in the mood at that moment. He waved his hand tiredly. "Stop talking. You can leave first. I still have work to do." Chen Tingfang was very smart. She knew when to be obedient and when to be willful. She put on an affectionate look that said, "Even if you misunderstood me, I still love you very much." She looked at him as if she wanted to say something. Then, she left the study. Ji Bowen watched her figure disappear at the door and sighed deeply. Chen Tingfang had just returned to her room when Yizisu knocked on the door. She walked in with a worried expression. "Mom, what happened? You and Uncle Ji don't seem right." Chen Tingfang leaned against the chair dispiritedly. She pointed at the gossip magazine on the coffee table. "Take a look. I'm now a celebrity in Ing City. Ranking of the most vicious stepmothers in the wealthy families. Number 1, Chen Tingfang. Reasons for being on the list. First, she's heartless enough. Not only did she secretly abuse 2 children who weren't her biological children, she even bribed people from underground organizations to kidnap her stepson and tried to inject him with drugs. She bribed Wang Wei to splash sulfuric acid on her stepdaughter in an attempt to disfigure her. Second, her acting skills are high-end and classy. She can be considered a best actress. Her acting as a virtuous wife and loving mother is so vivid that even her husband, who shares the same bed as her, is kept in the dark. I'll give you 32 likes. Most vicious stepmother, please do your best. We all have high hopes for you." The magazine published Chen Tingfang's photos and her vicious deeds. The more Yizisu read, the more alarmed she became. 80 to 90% of the content was true. What was more frightening was that the person who leaked the news even stated the time and place clearly. Yizisu's fingers tightened and she crumpled the magazine into a ball. She said anxiously, "Mom, what's going on? Why would those things appear in the magazine?" Chen Tingfang said coldly, the person who leaked the news seems to have been hiding in the dark and spying on us. Other than Ji Yuqi, I can't think of a second person who knows about these things. Every time we deal with Ji Yuqi, we're always tricked by her. She seems to have known what we're going to do. Zissou, do you think she installed a listening device in our room? Yi Zissou was shocked. That can't be. That's hard to say. I'm going to get someone to check this villa thoroughly. For safety's sake, we'll all get a new SIM card. In the future, we'll use the new SIM card when we talk, in case she eavesdrops on us. Also, if there's anything important in the future, we'll discuss it outside. Yi Zissou hesitated for a moment. Mom, don't you think you're making a mountain out of a molehill? Maybe she's just too lucky, or maybe we gave ourselves away and made her realize that something was wrong. Chen Tingfang said with certainty, no, once or twice can be considered good luck. But to be able to turn danger into safety every time, that's very unusual. Zissou, this time, I've lost a lot. Xia Bing went to jail for me. I have to compensate him. In addition, I spent 300,000 to bribe Wang Wei. I don't have much money left. After Tianhao enters the G group, let him build up his own power and take control of the G group as soon as possible. He's our only hope now. Yi Zissou massaged her shoulders and said softly, Mom, don't worry. I've already talked to him. He won't let us down. I hope so. Chen Tingfang closed her eyes tiredly. Actually, she didn't think highly of Jiang Tianhao, but since they were in the same boat, she had to help him. Ji Yuqi was in the room talking to Qing Sang on the phone. During this period, she was being watched too closely by Chen Tingfang. She couldn't go to the company, so she entrusted the company to Qing Sang. Every day, Qing Sang would report to her about the company's situation. There's news from the factory. The first batch of goods is ready. They can be sent out tonight. The Yu Family Shopping Mall is also ready. When do you plan to launch our brand? Ji Yuqi thought for a while and said, there's no rush. We missed the summer clothing market. Now, we're aiming for autumn and winter. I plan to hold a fashion conference and invite all the major media outlets to promote our brand. Oh right, the brand Amy under the G Group will be holding a fashion conference next week. Arrange for 2 designers to attend. They're young ladies with no experience. It'll be good for them to go and learn from them. Okay, I understand. The Ministry of Commerce has already signed agreements with a few online media outlets. After our brand is launched, the online promotion will be fully launched. Ji Yuqi smiled and said, thank you for your hard work, Qing Sang. Help me tell everyone that they'll get a bonus next month. Okay, then I'll thank CEO Ji on behalf of everyone. Qing Sang's tone had a rare hint of teasing. Ji Yuqi joked, I didn't expect Vice CEO Qing Sang to be so kind. If you share some of this kindness with Yu Lei, he won't be so sad. Almost everyone in the company knew that Yu Lei had feelings for Qing Sang. After all, the Western-style CEO Yu sent a bouquet of roses to her office every 2 to 3 days. Qing Sang's voice was cold. Actually, our big boss is also quite sad. The big boss was referring to Shinja. Although the news of Shinja sacrificing himself to save Yuqi was exposed by the media and caused everyone to speculate about their relationship, due to multiple considerations, Yuqi didn't plan to publicize their relationship for the time being. Therefore, Shinja had been complaining recently. Hey, you can't take revenge like this. Ji Yuqi wanted to say something, but suddenly heard a knock on the door. She walked to the door and said, someone is knocking on the door. That's it. I'll leave the company to you. The door opened, and the well-dressed Jiang Tianhao was standing at the door. Perhaps it was because he had been living a good life recently, Jiang Tianhao was in high spirits and looked as gentle as jade. He stood at the door like a beautiful orchid tree. Ji Yuqi sighed inwardly. Even though he was a scumbag, he still had a good appearance. Senior, oh no, brother-in-law, why are you looking for me? She was still blocking the door and didn't have any intention of inviting him in. What a joke. A man and a woman alone in the same room together. Wouldn't it cause a lot of criticism? Moreover, this man was her brother-in-law now. Jiang Tianhao seemed to have sensed her vigilance. His eyes darkened slightly, the smile on his lips froze, and his voice was a little bitter. Yuqi, I just read the newspaper and found out that you were almost splashed with sulfuric acid. I was worried about you, so I came to check on you. Are you okay? Ji Yuqi's voice was calm. I'm fine. Thank you for asking. His gaze was deep. Aren't you going to invite me in? She said indifferently, it's not very convenient. He was stunned. He didn't expect her to be so direct. He smiled bitterly and said, why do you have to be so clear? You know that I won't do anything to you. I know, but I can't guarantee that others will understand. You should know the phrase, melon and plum field. Ji Yuqi didn't think that she was a good person, but she also had a bottom line. She hated mistresses and couldn't let herself be one. Before he got married, she could pretend to like him and play with his feelings. But after they got married, she wouldn't give him that illusion anymore, and she wouldn't interfere in his marriage with Yizisu. Jiang Tianhao's thin lips moved a few times. His deep eyes were fixed on her, and there were many complicated emotions surging in them. After a moment of silence, he said in a low voice, Yuqi, must you be so heartless to me? Ji Yuqi's expression was indifferent. From the moment you got married, there was only the relationship between sister and brother-in-law left between us. Since you've married Zisu, please cherish her. Don't eat from the bowl and look at the pot. If you do, I will look down on you. He was shocked and stared at her in disbelief. How can you say such things? Don't you understand my feelings? Add, Xinwu 799. Chapter 875. Ji Yuqi frowned impatiently. She really wanted to pry open his head to see what was going on inside. Could it be that he could have an extramarital affair just because he loved her? Scumbags were disgusting. They played with a woman's feelings in the name of true love. Your feelings? I'm your true love, aren't I? Is there any use? Don't you think it's too late to say all this now? Or are you so naive to think that I'll wait for you forever? Each of her words was more powerful than the last. They were like a hammer that smashed into his heart. His expression instantly turned ugly. He stared at her in disbelief and muttered, "Don't you love me?" Ji Yuqi sneered. Huh? So I deserve to be a mistress and wait for you forever? She really didn't know what kind of mentality Yizisu had in her previous life when she accepted this kind of true love. A scumbag and a slut were really a match made in heaven. The beautiful dream that Jiang Tianhao had woven in his heart was mercilessly shattered by her. He really thought that Ji Yuqi would wait for him and agree to be the woman outside of his marriage. He had already thought it through. He would love her dearly and treat her 1,000 times better than Yizisu. But she was actually unwilling. He clenched his fingers tightly and felt a sharp pain in his palm. Only then did he remember his original motive. He slowly raised his hand and opened his fist in front of her. A beautiful sapphire bracelet lay in his palm. His gaze was startled and his voice was dry. I know that you have a sapphire necklace. When I saw this bracelet, my first thought was that it matched your necklace very well. No need. I already have a better matching bracelet. Ji Yuqi stretched out her wrist and pulled up her sleeve. She wore a sapphire bracelet on her slender, fair wrist. It looked like a light blue stream flowing on her wrist. It was 10 times better than his sapphire bracelet. Jiang Tianhao stared fixedly at her wrist, his handsome face ashen. For some reason, the image of Shenja pouncing on her to save her suddenly popped up in his mind. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. Your boyfriend gave it to you? Ji Yuqi withdrew her wrist unhappily. Can't I buy it myself? Jiang Tianhao choked at her words. With an unnatural expression, he said, No, what I meant was, do you have a boyfriend? That's my business, so there's no need for brother-in-law to get involved. Ji Yuchi didn't want to be entangled with him anymore, so she asked with a cold gaze, is there anything else? If there's nothing else, I want to go in and rest. Her dismissal order was very direct. Jiang Tianhao was momentarily embarrassed and took half a step back. No, bam. Before he could finish speaking, she had already mercilessly slammed the door in his face. In the corridor on the third floor, Yizisu's right hand gripped the railing tightly. Her beautiful face was distorted with anger. Her body was trembling and her lips were trembling. She couldn't wait to rush up to Jiang Tianhao and ask him what he thought of her as. She didn't expect to hear the conversation between Jiang Tianhao and Ji Yuchi in the corridor after returning from her mother's room. Although they had deliberately lowered their voices, the entire building was very quiet. Moreover, she was only a wall away from them, so of course she could hear everything clearly. When the two of them were on their honeymoon abroad, he was gentle and considerate to her. She thought that there was no one else between them, but who knew that it was just her wishful thinking. She was sincere to him, but he was always thinking of two-timing her. It really hurt her heart. Yizisu bit her fist and cried silently. Jiang Tianhao stood outside Ji Yuchi's room with an expressionless face. At that moment, his whole body exuded a faintly discernible dark aura. The bestial nature in his body was awakened. His deep eyes were filled with turbulent waves, and he was terrifyingly sinister. One day, he would take everything from the Ji family and make that woman Ji Yuchi kneel in front of him and beg for his love. In the empty corridor, the crisp sound of footsteps could be heard. Yizisu's gentle voice came from behind him. Tianhao, why aren't you resting in your room? Why are you standing here in a daze? Jiang Tianhao slowly turned his head. He put his right hand naturally into his trouser pocket and put the bracelet in his palm. A gentle smile appeared on his handsome face. It's too lonely in a room alone. I'm waiting for my wife here. Yizisu pretended not to see his little actions. For the first time, she felt disgusted by his perfect smile. She smiled and walked closer to him. She hugged his waist and leaned her head against his chest. Hubby, do you love me? He stroked her soft hair with his warm hands and said without hesitation, yes. He answered too quickly. It was like a computer program without any mistakes. Yizisu looked down mockingly. The thorn in her heart became deeper and deeper, and the gap between the two of them became wider. Marriage was like a besieged city. Two people with bad intentions were besieged in the city and tortured each other. At the reunion dinner that night, everyone put on a mask and played their roles perfectly. The next day, Jiang Tianhao and Yizisu returned to their apartment and started their life together. Yizisu had been spoiled by Chen Tingfang since she was young. She had never done any housework before. She had hired a nanny. She disliked the nanny's clumsiness and planned to do it herself. However, when she was mopping the floor, she spilled water everywhere. When she was cooking, she almost started a fire. When she was washing the clothes, she forgot to put them away. Jiang Tianhao finally understood that the soup Yizisu made for him in the past was not made by her. He reluctantly accepted the fact that his wife could not do anything. He took the opportunity to put forward a condition. Honey, bring my mother over. With her taking care of us, you don't have to work so hard. Yizisu was unwilling. At the wedding, she had seen Jiang Tianhao's mother, Yu Xiu. Yu Xiu was a typical rural woman. She dressed tackily and spoke rudely. She did not seem easy to get along with. Thus, she pouted unhappily. Honey, mother-in-law has worked hard all her life. Let's let her enjoy life in the countryside. Don't trouble her anymore. Jiang Tianhao was unhappy, but his voice was very gentle. Honey, I'm worried about Mom living in the countryside alone. She's easy to get along with. When we got married, she often praised you in front of me. No matter how unwilling she was, Yizisu could not show it. She could only agree and smile. Really? I miss Mom too. When is a good time? Let's bring her over. Jiang Tianhao curled his lips in satisfaction. Let's do it this weekend. If you're tired, I'll go back alone. I'm not tired. Yi Zixu obediently leaned on his chest. Her fingers drew circles mischievously. She said coquettishly, we're husband and wife. Of course, we have to pick up mother-in-law together. Let her see that I'm a filial daughter-in-law. Yes, filial. My wife is the most filial. Jiang Tianhao held her mischievous hand and suddenly carried her horizontally. He bent down and kissed her lips. He murmured vaguely, what a little vixen, ********. Chen Tingfang did as she said. The next day, she used the excuse of strengthening the security at home. After consulting with Ji Bowen, they contacted the best security company and asked their staff to check the inside and outside of the villa. They also replaced the previous security system with the latest technology. Unfortunately, from the beginning to the end, they did not find any surveillance cameras or listening devices. Not only did Chen Tingfang not feel relieved, but she felt even more threatened. Was Ji Yuqi really so smart that he could find loopholes in everything? In the following days, Chen Tingfang calmed down again. Now that Ji Bowen was neither cold nor warm to her, she felt depressed. Those rich madams also stepped on those who were higher up and stepped on those who were lower up. In the past, they would invite her for tea and chat, play cards, or do beauty treatments, but now they all ignored her. She was bored at home for a few days. Finally, when Ji Bowen went on a business trip, she went out to relax and have some fun. In this dark and misty night, a similarly lonely crowd poured into this noisy bar. Under the colorful lights, all kinds of men and women on the dance floor swayed their bodies to the explosive music. Lazy and charming middle-aged women or young and beautiful middle-aged women sat at the bar, drinking quietly. Men were looking for good prey, impatiently or elegantly approaching. Beauty, can I have a dance with you? A well-dressed, successful man leaned against the bar counter. He smiled as he looked at the woman who was drinking. The woman had a graceful figure, heavy makeup, sexy red lips that were like raging flames, and her slender eyes were filled with boundless flirtatiousness. The rarest thing about her was that she had a pair of fair and slender hands. Her slender fingers held the wine glass and gently swayed it. Her languid and enchanting charm diffused in this ambiguous atmosphere, causing people to be so excited that they couldn't help but tremble. Her charming eyes moved slightly, and her chin was slightly raised, reserved and elegant. Not interested, but I'll allow you to drink with me. Her voice was cold, like a queen. With the man's status, there were many women who flocked to him like bees and butterflies. He rarely met such a cold and arrogant type, so he could not help but be interested. He curled his lips and sat beside her. He snapped his fingers. Whiskey on the rocks. The bartender poured a glass of wine at the fastest speed and placed it in front of him. The man turned to look at the woman sitting beside him. She was not like other women who chattered endlessly. She quietly tasted the red wine in her hand, lazy and charming like a Persian cat in the afternoon. He laughed softly. I don't think I've seen you here before. Chen Tingfang looked up slightly and said lightly, I rarely come out to play. She was not lying. When she was 20 years old, she was too young and did not know how to play. When she was 30 years old, she had a good relationship with her ex-husband, so there was no need for her to come out to play. After she married Ji Bowen, she had a lot of worries and pressure. She wanted to come out to relax, but her status was there, and she was afraid that she would meet people in the circle when she went out to play. The man raised his eyebrows, and a smile appeared on his handsome face. I didn't expect to be so honored. Chen Tingfang did not say a word to his words, and used the wine glass in her hand to touch his glass. Drink. Okay, how can I not obey a beauty's order? My name is David. How should I address you, beauty? The man took a sip of wine and smiled. Of course, she would not tell others her real name when she came out to play. Chen Tingfang said casually, Mary. David laughed softly. His laughter was joyful and there was a hint of teasing. Good name. She glanced at him sideways, and her red lips curved slightly. It's just a name. What's so funny, Muscle Man? Muscle Man was mocking his name, David. Everyone knew that David was a sculpture by Michelangelo, and he had muscles that were a perfect combination of strength and beauty. David laughed even more happily. Oh, my dear Miss Mary, please don't be angry. I just think that this name suits your temperament very well. Attention, Song Shu 566. Chapter 876. Chen Tingfang shrugged and said lazily, thanks for the compliment. David was very good at flirting. With just a few words, he had piqued Chen Tingfang's interest. She chatted happily with him and the two of them drank one glass after another. Unknowingly, he had already put his arm around her waist. She looked at his smooth chin in a daze and laughed in a mesmerizing voice. I'm drunk, gentlemen. Please call a cab for me. David's palm caressed her waist and his thin coat blew warm air into her ear. His voice was dark and magnetic, with a hint of seduction. Come with me. No. Chen Tingfang giggled. She placed her soft hands on his chest and used a little strength to sit up in his arms. She was just drunk and had not lost her mind. It was okay to flirt, but it was too dangerous to have a one-night stand, especially with a man who was so slippery. Woman, you've already ignited my fire. Do you think you can escape so easily? David pulled her into his arms, his deep eyes flickering with fire. Chen Tingfang was not a pure girl. His little tricks could not scare her. She did not change her expression and took out her phone from her handbag. She lazily dialed a number and said in a drunken voice, "Hey Han, I'm drunk." A man's anxious voice suddenly came from the other side of the phone. Where are you? I'll come and pick you up. Chen Tingfang chuckled. This was her original goal. He was the only person she could trust now. She pushed David's hand away from her waist. I'm at Lan Yen Bar. Hurry up. I'll wait for you. Okay, okay. Don't run around. Gigai, sit and wait for me. Don't let strange men near you. Xiao Yihan sounded very anxious. He seemed to have bumped into something and there was a loud sound of something breaking from the phone. She did not know if it was the effect of the alcohol, but Chen Tingfang suddenly felt that the man who was worried about her was very cute. Is it really not okay? Just as she was in a daze, the unique scent of a man entered her nose, and David buried his head in her neck. Stop messing around, I'm not in the mood today. She frowned impatiently and pushed his furry head away. Well, coercion is not the behavior of a gentleman. David stood up and slowly tidied up his clothes. His elegant and reserved appearance made people unable to resist the urge to destroy him. The blood in Chen Tingfang's body was faintly burning. She raised her eyebrows and smiled wickedly. Suddenly, she lay in his arms and used their bodies to block her hand from sliding down until she reached the part he was proud of. His body suddenly tensed up and he stared at her with a dangerous gaze. He gritted his teeth and said, "You seductress, I really want to do you on the spot." She knew when to stop and quickly retreated. Her eyes were filled with mischief. Mr. Muscle, you should find someone else. David's handsome face darkened as he bared his teeth at her. Seeing the man's figure leaving in a sorry state, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. Her seductive and wanton laughter was inconspicuous in the noisy night, but it ignited a flame in some people's eyes. Another two people came up to hit on her. Looking at them, they seemed to be used to playing multiplayer games. Chen Tingfang was drunk and her head started to feel heavy. She didn't have the patience to pay attention to them. Who would have thought that these two would be so thick-skinned and wouldn't let her go? They actually forcefully grabbed her left and right arms and took her out of the bar. You two bastards, let go of me. She slurred and pushed one of them away. She stumbled forward and suddenly bumped into a warm wall. The wall actually reached out and caught her. A familiar voice sounded above her head. She's my girl, get lost. The voice was cold and filled with anger and murderous intent. The two men looked at each other and hurriedly ran away. Xiao Han lowered his head and looked helplessly at the girl in his arms. He didn't know what she thought he was, but she actually clung onto him tightly like an octopus. She even muttered softly, "So cold, so comfortable." His eyebrows twitched and his face darkened. He patted her back and called out to her, "Ting Fang, wake up. It's me, Han." In a daze, Ting Fang felt that she was hugging an ice-cold body, relieving the heat and dryness she felt after getting drunk. She seemed to hear Xiao Han's voice and tried hard to open her eyes. From this angle, she could see Xiao Han's thin chin and straight nose. Seeing that she opened her eyes, his tense mouth relaxed and his obsidian-like eyes glowed with gentleness. He caressed her forehead and asked with concern, "Are you okay? Do you recognize who I am?" "I'm going to faint." Ting Fang was so drunk that she felt uncomfortable. Her head hurt and her chest felt stuffy. Her remaining rationality made her want to get out of his arms, but her soft body didn't allow it. Her legs were so light that she couldn't even stand properly. "You're already so drunk, why are you still trying to act tough? Gigai, don't move." Xiao Han naturally carried her horizontally and walked towards his car. Ting Fang lay in his arms and smelled his unique scent. Her cheeks were burning and her heart suddenly started to beat faster. Even her drunkenness seemed to have dissipated a little. Xiao Han placed her in the car and got in as well. He leaned over and was almost touching her. His hands caressed her side. She moved uneasily and felt inexplicably nervous. However, she saw him grab the seatbelt buckle and fasten it for her. When he straightened his body and pulled away from her, she felt a faint sense of disappointment. Ting Fang held her forehead and thought that she must have drunk too much. She must have drunk too much. "Han, please take me home." She leaned against the back of the seat and closed her eyes to rest. The only response she got was the sound of the car starting. Xiao Han drove the car silently and didn't say a word. In a daze, Ting Fang dreamed of the cat she used to keep in front of her chest. Its wet head was licking her face and its meaty claws were scratching her waist. She impatiently reached out her hand and wanted to shake off the cat that was disturbing her dreams. Unexpectedly, her hand was caught by someone. She wanted to call out, but her mouth was blocked. Her whole body was so hot that it was about to explode. She struggled to open her eyes. An enlarged handsome face appeared in front of her. There was a touch of innocence in his handsomeness. His exquisite face was dyed with an abnormal blush and his deep eyes were filled with lust. His lips parted slightly and he panted heavily. His voice was low and hoarse. "Ting Fang, I want you. I want you so much that my body hurts." She widened her eyes in shock. She didn't know when the two of them were lying in an unfamiliar room. Their clothes were already in a mess. Being bullied by a man who was more than 10 years younger than her, she flew into a rage out of humiliation. She raised her hand and slapped his cheek. He didn't dodge and allowed her hand to land on his flushed cheeks. With a crisp slap, a few red marks were left on his cheeks. She looked away uncomfortably and pushed him away. She said angrily, "I'll take it as if nothing happened today. Xiao Han, let's end it here." She was embarrassed and angry at the same time. Her fingers trembled as she tidied up her clothes. Even when she carried her handbag and walked to the door, she still did not hear Xiao Han's voice. The complicated emotions in her heart made her stop in her tracks uncontrollably. She turned around to take a look, only to see him sitting at the head of the bed with his clothes disheveled. His hands were hugging his head, and his head was buried very, very low. She could not see his face clearly, but something quickly slid down his cheeks and rolled to the floor, gathering into a puddle. He was crying. Men don't cry easily, but he was actually crying. At that moment, her heart ached. This was different from the love between an elder and a junior. This was the love between a man and a woman. Towards this man who admired her and bravely expressed his love for her, she couldn't ignore his tears. She couldn't control her legs as she walked step by step to his side and stood still. She handed him a handkerchief and said, "Don't cry. You're a man. Xiao Han's shoulders shook a few times. Suddenly, he reached out and hugged her legs. His hoarse voice was full of grievance as he said, "Unless you take back what you said just now." "How childish." Chen Tingfang sighed and ruffled his hair. "I said a lot of things." "Which one were you referring to?" "The one about us ending it here." His arms around her legs tightened. His voice was pained as he said, "I'll stay away from you in the future, but I beg you, don't let us become strangers." She had never heard this sunny and proud man speak in such a humble tone. Chen Tingfang's heart ached for no reason. She lowered her head and stared blankly at the top of his head. She muttered, "What do you like about me? At my age, I'm old enough to be your mother." He was silent for a moment before he slowly said, "Warmth. You let me feel the warmth of a family. Although I grew up in a wealthy family, my parents only knew how to do business and never cared about me. When I grew up, the girls who approached me all had other intentions. No one cared about me as sincerely as you do. To me, age is not a problem. I just like you. I don't care if you have a family or what status you have now. Those aren't important. What's important is that I like you as a person." Chen Tingfang's heart trembled. Her feelings and fantasies about love had long been obliterated by life. However, Xiao Han's appearance was like a flame in her life. It satisfied her vanity as a woman and ignited her forbidden pleasure. Her body trembled slightly as a voice in her head shouted, "You're still young. How can you live like a shell without a soul? Accept him. Accept this young man's surging feelings." Tingfang. Feeling her trembling, Xiao Han called out her name. His wet and warm tongue devoutly worshipped her calf. He was like a believer in love. No matter how many thorns lay in front of him, he was willing to move forward without a care for his own safety. Chen Tingfang was suddenly infected by his courage. When he hugged her in his arms and kissed her on the cheek, she did not push him away. Gradually, it became difficult to tell who was the first to take the initiative. The two lonely people hugged each other fiercely. Soon, they were entangled in this blurry night. Xiao Han's movements were very inexperienced. This made Chen Tingfang believe that it was indeed his first time. She was shy and proud as she guided him to become a real man. The moment the two of them made love, he leaned over her ear and said, "I love you," over and over again. She was so moved that tears streamed down her face. Beauty Novel, Hengcha 866. Chapter 877. The next day, Chen Tingfang woke up at dawn. Seeing the young man holding her in his arms, she felt the sweetness of her first love, but also a sense of guilt. The man in front of her was really good-looking, beautiful and delicious. She couldn't help but caress his handsome face and trace the perfect shape of his lips with her finger. Suddenly, he opened his mouth and sucked on her finger. When he opened his eyes, there was still a sense of confusion unique to the morning. "Good morning, baby." He gently bit her finger and hugged her in his arms contentedly. He buried his head between her soft breasts and rubbed it comfortably. Chen Tingfang blushed and rubbed his hair. Her voice was indescribably gentle. "Let go of me. I want to go back. I'm not letting go. I want to hug you like this forever." He pouted and tightened his arms around her. His furry head rubbed against her restlessly and his two legs overlapped with hers, as if he could prevent her from running away. It turned out that a man was so cute when he acted coquettishly. She couldn't help but laugh. Even the guilt in her heart disappeared. She patted his back gently and coaxed him gently. "Stop fooling around. You know my family's situation. You don't want to make things difficult for me, right? When it's convenient for me, I'll come and see you, okay? You said it. If you go back on your words, you're a dog." He bit her chest hard and then looked up. His eyes were sparkling as he smiled proudly. "If I leave my mark, you'll be mine. Naughty little rascal." She held his cheeks with both hands and bit his lips in revenge. The two of them were lovey-dovey for a while and almost burned again. Fortunately, Chen Tingfang still had some sense. She pushed away the man who was making a fuss about eating meat and tidied herself up. She planned to go home while it was still early so that they wouldn't be seen by others. Xiaoyihan was topless with a towel wrapped around his waist. He was extremely gentle and considerate as he sent her to the door. Chen Tingfang gave him a goodbye kiss under his resentful gaze and then got into her car. She didn't expect Ji Yuqi, who had a habit of jogging in the morning, to come. Ji Yuqi came back from her morning run and bumped into Chen Tingfang coming out of the car. She saw that her skin was rosy and there was a smile in the corner of her eyes, like a withered tree in spring. Ji Yuqi curled her lips and stared meaningfully at Chen Tingfang's neck. She could vaguely see a few hickeys. Oh, this old woman's integrity had long been thrown into the Pacific Ocean. She was of course guilty. Chen. She covered it up. She smiled and said, Yuqi, you're training so early. Of. Ji Yuqi's smile widened. Yes, Auntie Chen. You're quite early too. These words didn't sound right at all. Chen Tingfang smiled. I was playing cards with my friends last night. It was too late, so I stayed there for the night. I was afraid that you guys would be worried, so I rushed back early in the morning. Ji Yuqi nodded. I understand. It's a good thing that Aunt Chen has a good relationship with your friends. I'm sweating all over and feeling uncomfortable. I'm going upstairs to take a shower. Okay, go ahead. Be careful not to catch a cold. Chen Tingfang smiled kindly and sighed secretly. Ji Bowen's business trip this time was overseas and would take more than 10 days. It was convenient for Chen Tingfang. She would find an excuse to go out every day and hang out with Xiaoyihan. Xiaoyihan had just had sex and was very enthusiastic about sex. After all, she was old and couldn't take it after fooling around for a few days. Xiaoyihan naturally felt sorry for her and hugged her in his arms. The two of them covered themselves with the quilt and chatted. Chen Tingfang saw his tolerance and consideration in her eyes, and her heart was indescribably touched. If the first time she rolled in the bed with him was mixed with the element of desire, then now, she had already fallen in love with him. Her relationship with Xiaoyihan had also developed rapidly in the past 10 days. It felt like one day apart felt like 3 years. Compared to her comfort, Yi Zhisu didn't have a good time. Yi Zhisu and Jiang Tianhao went back to their hometown. In a remote mountain village, they brought Jiang Tianhao's mother and her mother-in-law, Yu Xiu, to the city. Yu Xiu was a few years older than Chen Tingfang, but judging from her appearance, she was almost 20 years older than her. Yu Xiu was used to living in the countryside and wore old-fashioned clothes. Her white hair was tied up with a rubber band. When she smiled, her face was full of wrinkles. When she didn't smile, she gave people a gloomy feeling. That night, Yi Zhisu lay in Jiang Tianhao's arms. Her fingers wandered around his chest and she said softly, Hubby, tomorrow I want to take mother-in-law to buy some clothes and change her hairstyle. Otherwise, if that old woman walked out, wouldn't it be embarrassing for her? Okay, you arrange it. I trust your taste. Jiang Tianhao kissed her cheek and his hands began to play naughty. The husband and wife were about to do something that husband and wife should do when suddenly, a hoarse and unpleasant voice came from outside the bedroom door. Tianhao, quickly come out and help me take a look. Wait for me, I'll be right back. Jiang Tianhao kissed Yi Zhisu's face hard. He rolled over and quickly put on his coat. Mom, what's wrong? He closed the bedroom door and asked Yu Xiu, who was standing at the door. Yu Xiu said, the air conditioner is on all night. It's a waste of electricity. Help me turn it off. Jiang Tianhao was helpless. Mom, our family doesn't lack money now. If we don't turn on the air conditioner at night, it'll be very hot. You won't be comfortable sleeping. Yu Xiu grabbed his arm and dragged him into her room. She chattered, what's uncomfortable? I've lived in the countryside for so many years. I didn't even use an electric fan, but I still got through it. You young people only know how to enjoy life. Besides, It's easy to catch a cold if you're exposed to the air conditioner all night. You guys should stop blowing it off. Hurry up and turn it off. Jiang Tianhao was already used to her nagging. He smiled good-naturedly. Okay, I'll listen to you. We'll turn it off in a bit. As he spoke, he picked up the remote control and turned off the air conditioner in her room. Mom, it's getting late. You should rest early. Wait, talk to me. Yu Xiu grabbed his arm and pulled him to sit beside her. She asked with a serious face, I was the last to know about your marriage. That's fine. But tell me, why did you marry the daughter of your enemy? The last time I attended your wedding, I couldn't wait to rush in front of Ji Bowen and give him a few tight slaps. Jiang Tianhao said helplessly, Mom, how many times have I told you? Zhisu isn't Ji Bowen's biological daughter. Besides, don't you understand why I married her? It's because I want to enter the Ji group smoothly. Even if she isn't Ji Bowen's biological daughter, Ji Bowen won't mistreat her. Of course, he won't mistreat her son-in-law either. Don't forget about the blood feud between our family and theirs. Don't be so lovey-dovey with her every day. The beauty's village is the hero's mound. I think she's not a good person with that vixen look of hers. The mother and son chatted very softly, but their voices could still be heard through the small gap in the door to the corridor outside. Yi Zhisu was holding a thin blanket in her arms. She was planning to give it to Yu Xiu. Her fingers gripped the blanket tightly as if she wanted to tear it to shreds. Her beautiful face was contorted with anger. She was so silly and naive. She had planned to forgive Jiang Tianhao once and get along with his mother. She hadn't expected that the mother and son would see her this way. The anger in her heart had reached its peak and was about to drive Yi Zhisu crazy. When she heard that the people inside were about to end their conversation, she finally regained a bit of her rationality. She hugged the blanket, lightened her footsteps, and quickly returned to the bedroom. When Jiang Tianhao returned, Yi Zhisu was taking a shower in the bathroom. The sound of water splashing could be heard, and her graceful figure was imprinted on the glass door. It was very seductive. His eyes darkened and he knocked on the bathroom door. His voice was hoarse. Honey, why are you taking a shower now? Yi Zhisu's hair was wet and clung tightly to her naked back. Her tears were like broken beads, falling down continuously. They mixed with the water droplets on her face, and it was hard to tell whether they were tears or water. Hearing no answer, Jiang Tianhao knocked on the door again. Honey, are you okay? Yi Zhisu bit her fist and tried to answer in a calm voice. I'm fine. The sound of the water is too loud. I can't hear clearly. Let me go out first. When she came out, it was already 10 minutes later. Her eyes were slightly red from crying, but under the dim light, it wasn't too obvious. She was wrapped in a bath towel, like a mermaid coming out of the bath. She was so beautiful that it was intoxicating. Although Jiang Tianhao no longer loved her, he was still very interested in her body. He pulled her into his arms and pulled off the bath towel on her body. She whispered, "You're so annoying. My hair is still wet. I'll help you dry it." Jiang Tianhao pinched her softness a few times and said in a hoarse voice. When they first fell in love, he was also so gentle to her. After she washed her hair, he would dry it for her. Watching her long hair slide between his fingers, there was an indescribable sweetness. Now, he would occasionally dry her hair for her, but there was no longer the love she was familiar with in his eyes. There was only lust left. Yi Zhisu had been with him for a long time, so she knew very well how to tease him. When her hair was half dry, the two were already hugging each other and rolling on the boat. He covered her body, sweating like rain. When he was aroused, he would say, "I love you." However, she would never believe it again. She knew that it was just a man's way of coaxing women. Even when they were hugging each other and climbing to the peak, her eyes were cold. Her long nails left scars on his back. Her heart was already full of holes. Jiang Tianhao, from now on, we are husband and wife. Since you don't have true feelings, I won't give my true feelings. You're not the only one who knows how to play with feelings. I'm also very good at it. The torture had just begun. Yi Zixu could feign civility with Jiang Tianhao, but in front of Yu Xiu, her little tricks were not enough. Granny was the most ferocious creature in the world. The old woman pointed at the wet floor and nagged, "Zixu, why don't you know how to do anything? You can't even mop the floor clean. Why did our Jiang Tianhao marry you?" Yi Zixu gritted her teeth and endured, "Mom, don't be angry. I'll mop it again." The old woman sat at the dining table and shouted, "Yi Zixu, how did you cook this food? The rice is burnt, there are still eggshells in the scrambled eggs, and you forgot to put salt in the fish soup. Is this even fit for human consumption?" Yi Zixu continued to endure, "Mom, it's my first time cooking. I'm not very skilled. Let's order takeout." The old woman pointed at the clothes in the washing machine and shouted, "Daughter-in-law, these underwear should be washed by hand. You put them together. It's so messy. It's so unhygienic. Aren't you, miss? Don't you know this?" Attention, Songshu 566. Chapter 878. Yi Zixu felt like she was going to suffer from internal injuries. She squeezed out a few words from between her teeth. "We used to have servants at home. I took them out to wash. Now that you're married, do you still think you're miss from a wealthy family? Since you've married into our family, you'll have to serve Tianhao and me well." The old witch left her with a sinister tone. Then, she went out to dance with the old couple she had just met. The room was quiet. Yi Zixu squatted in the bathroom and used both hands to wash her underwear. After scrubbing for a long time, her hands turned red. She angrily threw her clothes into the basin and kicked it over. She held her head with both hands and screamed uncontrollably. Why? Why did she, the great miss from a wealthy family, have to put up with that old witch? She had enough. She angrily packed her luggage and planned to return to her parents' home. After she got into the car, she dialed a number with trembling fingers. The moment the call went through, she burst into tears. "Mom, I can't take it anymore. Jiang Tianhao's mother is a monster. I hate her. I hate her to death." At this moment, Chen Tingfang was having sex with Xiao Yihan. She was a little unhappy that the warm atmosphere was interrupted. She said calmly, "I've told you before that you're not in the same class as them. There will be a difference between you and them. You didn't listen. Great, now my words have come true. Mom, I was wrong. I shouldn't have disobeyed you. Boo-hoo, I don't want to stay in the same room with that old witch for a moment. I want to go home and stay for a few days." Chen Tingfang was agitated. She sat up from Xiao Yihan's arms. "Please don't. You've only been married for a short time. You're not giving Jiang Tianhao any face. What will he think of you? He'll stand on his mother's side. Be smart and pull him to your side. In the future, with him mediating between you and your mother, your life will be better." "Mom, I don't want to live with him anymore. I want a divorce." Yi Zixu was feeling wronged and angry at the same time. She didn't care about anything else and shouted out such a sentence. Chen Tingfang frowned. "Zixu, don't be so willful. You've been married for less than 2 months and you want a divorce. What will others think of you? Marriage is not a relationship. When 2 people form a family, there will definitely be a lot of conflicts. Is it something a mature person should say when they want to divorce just because of a small problem?" "Mom." Yi Zixu felt wronged. She cried even more sadly and regretted it even more. She blamed herself for not listening to her mother. Now, she had no way to vent her grievances. Okay, be good." Chen Tingfang's tone was much gentler. She coaxed, "Say a few words to your mother-in-law and coax her. Which daughter-in-law doesn't do this? As long as your husband loves you, it's better than anything else. Listen to me and don't throw a tantrum anymore." She gently comforted Yizisu for more than 10 minutes before she came to her senses. Her mother was right. Her reputation was very bad now. If she divorced Jiang Tianhao because of family differences, she would be laughed at to death. That damned old woman was super good at acting. She always took advantage of Tianhao's absence to torture her. When Tianhao came back, he saw how considerate his mother-in-law was to his daughter-in-law. That was why Tianhao stood on the old woman's side and completely ignored her occasional complaints. If he saw his mother bullying her, he would help her for the sake of the Ji family. Yizisu thought of this and snorted coldly. At the next intersection, she turned the car around. She didn't believe that she couldn't win against a damned old woman. "Honey, you're back." Jiang Tianhao opened the door and saw Yizisu wearing an apron and holding a spatula. She was waiting at the door with a smile on her face. He was shocked and frowned. "Honey, I thought you didn't know how to cook. Why are you dressed like this?" Yizisu hurriedly hid the spatula behind her back and giggled. "I think Granny is right. As a woman, how can I not know how to cook? That's why I've been learning for the whole day. I definitely won't disappoint you later. Honey, you must have worked hard all day. I've already prepared the hot water for you. When you're done, we'll have dinner." Before Jiang Tianhao could say anything, she had already snatched the briefcase from his hand and pushed him to the bathroom door. "I've already prepared the clothes for you. Honey, is there anything else you need?" Gentle and considerate, she was a perfect wife. However, Jiang Tianhao didn't feel happy at all. Instead, he had a strange feeling in his heart. He knew Yizisu. She was definitely not a housewife. What was going on? How did she become like this? Jiang Tianhao walked into the bathroom with doubts. The towel and clothes were neatly folded. The hot water in the bathtub was steaming. The smooth floor could almost reflect a person's figure. He couldn't believe that this was all thanks to Yizisu. Did the sun rise from the west? Ah, just as he was about to take off his clothes, he suddenly heard Yizisu's scream. Then, with a bang, something fell on the floor. Jiang Tianhao frowned. He knew that nothing good would come out of her cooking. He tidied up his clothes, opened the door, and was about to go to the kitchen to see what had happened when he heard his mother scolding. "Clumsy. You can't even do such a simple thing. Hurry up. Tianhao will eat after his bath. Don't starve him." Jiang Tianhao's eyebrows jumped. He was worried that Yizisu's daughter, Miss, had a temper. He didn't expect her to say softly, "I'm sorry, mother-in-law. I didn't do it on purpose. I'll get it done right away. Don't be angry." I've never seen someone as stupid as you. I'm ashamed to say that you're my daughter-in-law." Yu Xiu began to nag at Yizisu again. She thought that her son was taking a bath in the bathroom and couldn't hear her, so she lowered her voice slightly. Unexpectedly, she heard footsteps behind her. Jiang Tianhao stood behind her with a sullen face. She quickly changed her expression and said with a smile, "Zisu, why didn't you be careful? Did you burn your hand? Let me take a look." When Yizisu was cooking, oil accidentally splashed on the back of her hand, and then she dropped the spatula. After being scolded, her eyes only reddened, but she didn't look unhappy. When she heard Yu Xiu's words, she quickly smiled and said, "It's okay. I was just scalded by the oil. It doesn't hurt anymore." After saying that, she seemed to have just seen Jiang Tianhao standing behind Yu Xiu. She said in surprise, "Oh, hubby, you're done showering so quickly." Jiang Tianhao's face was gloomy. He looked at the guilty Yu Xiu, and then at Yizisu, who was pretending that nothing had happened. He said in a displeased tone, "Mom, is this how you've been treating Zisu for the past few days?" Yu Xiu looked down awkwardly. Before she could speak, Yizisu had already said, "Hubby, don't misunderstand. Mother-in-law is doing this for my own good. Also, I don't want to be a rice worm who doesn't know anything. I want to take good care of you with all my heart." A complicated emotion flashed past Jiang Tianhao's eyes. His thin lips tightened and he said in a deep voice, "Give me your hand." "Let me see." Yizisu retracted her hand behind her back and avoided his gaze. "I already said that it's okay. Hubby, you and mother-in-law can go out. The smell of smoke in the kitchen is too strong. There's only one dish left. Once it's done, we'll eat immediately." Jiang Tianhao didn't listen to her. Instead, he walked closer and grabbed her hand that was hidden behind her back. There were 2 blisters on the back of her white hand, and her fingers were also cut, leaving several bloody marks. He suppressed his anger and glared at her. "Is this what you mean by okay? It's really okay. It's just a small wound. It'll be fine soon." Yizisu smiled sweetly. "Hubby, are you feeling sorry for me? I'm so happy." Jiang Tianhao's chest tightened and he stiffly said, "Silly." Then he grabbed her wrist and dragged her out of the kitchen as he said, "Mom, I'll have to trouble you to stir-fry the remaining dish. Zisu's wound needs to be applied." Yizisu hurriedly turned around and smiled, "Sorry to trouble you, mother-in-law." Yushio waited for the 2 of them to walk away before she fiercely spat and scolded in a low voice, "Tui, little vixen." In the master bedroom, Jiang Tianhao carefully disinfected Yizisu's wound and applied some medicine. In order to appease her, he stroked her hair and said gently, "Has Mom been making things difficult for you recently?" Yizisu shook her head, "No, don't think too much. Mother-in-law is just a little strict with me. It's not considered making things difficult." "Hubby, how have you been at the company recently?" Her beautiful face was full of concern, and her big, beautiful eyes were full of affection. This greatly satisfied Jiang Tianhao's self-esteem as a man. He pulled her into his arms and gently stroked her hair. In a low voice, he said, "It's okay on the surface." On the surface, everyone respected him and said that he was the future crown prince. But in reality, everyone looked down on him. Who asked him to use his wife to climb up the ranks? Yizisu hugged his waist and leaned her head on his chest. She said softly, "I'm sorry, hubby. It's all because of me." "Silly, what does this have to do with you? Don't think too much. Everything will be fine." Jiang Tianhao lowered his head and kissed her forehead, but in his heart, he was thinking that Yizisu was becoming more and more sensible. Since she was so sensible, he would consider making her his wife forever. As for Ji Yuqi, she actually insulted him like that. After he took over the Ji group, he would make her his mistress to humiliate her. My husband is so powerful. He can definitely defeat those people who look down on others." Yizisu pouted and shook her fist. Her cute appearance made Jiang Tianhao unable to help but bite her lips. The 2 of them lingered for a while before they separated, panting. She shyly pushed his chest. "You're so annoying. Mother-in-law is still waiting for us outside." He raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Let's go eat." There were 4 dishes and a bowl of soup on the table. Yushio was busy filling the bowl with rice. When she saw Yizisu's shy smile, she curled her lips in disdain and cursed the vixen in her heart. "Hubby, try this. I made it myself." Yizisu put some scrambled eggs and tomatoes into Jiang Tianhao's bowl and looked at him eagerly. Jiang Tianhao took a bite. It was so sweet that he was sick of it. He forced a smile. "It's not bad." She smiled brightly. "Ah, that's great. There's also this. Try it." He tasted the black eggplant with garlic sauce. It was so salty that it was bitter. He held it in his mouth and didn't know whether to swallow or spit it out. He quickly picked up the glass of water, took a big gulp, and swallowed it. "How is it? Is it good?" She stared at him with a face full of anticipation. Jiang Tianhao couldn't say anything. He smiled encouragingly. "It's delicious." Welfare, Xinwu 799. Chapter 879. Bam! Yushio slammed her chopsticks on the table and said angrily, "What's so good about it? Is this salt-free? Is there anyone who adds as much as you do? And this fish soup, Why is it bitter? The tomato scrambled eggs are so sweet that it's nauseating, and there's even an eggshell inside. You're really pissing me off. Yizisu was startled by the sound of her slamming the table. Her eyes quickly became misty as she bit her lip and said timidly, I'm sorry, Grandma. I'll be more careful next time. Don't eat these anymore. I'll make them again. She stood up in a panic and picked up a plate in each hand. She was about to go back to the kitchen when Jiang Tianhao grabbed her arm. He said gently, It's okay. It's your first time cooking, so it's already very good that you can make it like this. Mom, don't be too picky. Zisu has to go to class during the day and tidy up the house. It's very hard on her. Yu Xiu snorted coldly. Because of her son's authority, she didn't say anything more. She pushed the plate of vegetables she had cooked in front of her son and said, Eat first. I'll go fry 2 eggs. Yi Zisu quickly said, Grandma, let me do it. Humph, you. I'm afraid you'll cook up something that even pigs won't eat. Yu Xiu huffed and threw a cold face. She pulled out a chair and walked briskly to the kitchen. Yi Zisu bit her lip and carefully glanced at Jiang Tianhao. I'm sorry, hubby. I'm always clumsy and can't do anything well. Jiang Tianhao sighed inwardly, but he had a gentle smile on his face. It's okay. You've never cooked before, so it's normal that you don't know how to cook. Let's hire a nanny so that you and Mom can relax a little. She blamed herself softly, It's all because I'm too useless. At a time like this, Jiang Tianhao could not reprimand her and could only comfort her gently. During the meal, Yu Xiu kept a straight face, while Jiang Tianhao was gentle and kind. From time to time, he would help Yi Zisu put food on her plate. Yi Zisu was secretly delighted. She had won the first competition between her and Yu Xiu. She would never have to do housework again. However, she didn't know that she was happy too early. A mother-in-law had countless ways to deal with her daughter-in-law. For example, in the mornings when Yi Zisu didn't have classes and wanted to sleep in, Yu Xiu would play music loudly in the living room. Yu Xiu sneered sinisterly when she dressed up beautifully and went shopping with her friends or had a gathering. Why are you dressed up so beautifully? Are you going out to seduce men? Hurry up and change your clothes, or you're not allowed to go out. Also, who are you going out with? Give me their phone number. I want to know if they're a man or a woman. When she and Jiang Tianhao were intending to do something as husband and wife, Yu Xiu would shout loudly outside the door. She would either ask Jiang Tianhao to help her adjust the TV or turn off the air conditioner. She would even chat with her. When Jiang Tianhao came back, her enthusiasm was extinguished. The most hateful thing was that Yu Xiu liked to chat with the elderly in the neighborhood. She spread the news that Yi Zisu had fallen in love and got married before graduating from university and had a miscarriage. She even said that she was the stepdaughter of a rich family and that she always pretended to be Miss when she was actually a stupid woman who didn't know anything. These words quickly spread throughout the neighborhood. The neighbors would smile strangely when they saw her. There were even a few perverted uncles who pretended to accidentally touch her arms or waist. It was obvious that they were trying to tease her. Yi Zisu was about to go crazy. She finally couldn't take it anymore and complained to Jiang Tianhao. However, he said, She's my mother after all. Just bear with it. Bear with it, bear with it. If she continued to bear with it, she would become a ninja turtle. Yi Zisu's resentment grew heavier and heavier. As long as there was a breakthrough, it would explode at any time. On this day, the battle between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law finally escalated from a verbal argument to a violent one. The cause of the incident was simple. Yi Zisu came home after class and saw Yu Xiu chatting with someone in the garden. She shouted at the top of her lungs, A girl who doesn't know how to do anything. She can't even serve a man well. What do you expect her to do? You don't say, but your daughter-in-law is really too much. If I were her mother-in-law, I would teach her a lesson. She doesn't do anything herself and even hired a nanny. Does she have money to burn at home? That's right, that's right. A group of old ladies chimed in. Everyone joined in on a crusade against Yizisu, this unfilial and unvirtuous daughter-in-law. Yizisu was so angry that her teeth itched. She wanted nothing more than to rush up and beat up that group of old ladies. She suppressed her anger and went home. When she opened the door to the master bedroom, the air was filled with the strong smell of perfume. She saw that the makeup table was in a mess. The perfume bottle was overturned on the table, and a bottle of expensive lotion was lying on the floor. The brown liquid was sticky and stained everywhere. The carpet was also dirty. She hugged her head and screamed in anger. When Yushio came back, she saw Yizisu sitting on the sofa with a cold expression. She ordered her unceremoniously, "Get me a glass of water. I'm dying of thirst." Yizisu didn't move. Yushio was furious. She walked up to her in a few steps and shouted, "I'm calling you. Are you deaf? Hurry up and get me a glass of water." Yizisu stood up abruptly. She stared coldly at her wrinkled face and said loudly, "Did you enter my room?" Yushio raised her head and said confidently, "I did." "So what? As his mother, can't I enter my son's room?" Yizisu's entire body emitted a sinister aura. She approached her step by step and said through gritted teeth, "Did you also spill my perfume and lotion? Not only did you spill them, but you didn't even clean them up. Isn't that too much? Why should I clean them up? Isn't this what a daughter-in-law should do? You're always so lazy. I should find something for you to do." The more Yushio said, the more reasonable she became. She couldn't help it. Who asked her to hate Ji Bowen and the Ji family? That was why she tried to torture Yizisu. Yizisu was furious. She shouted, "Old witch, shut up. I've tolerated you for a long time. Little vixen, you still have reason. I'll beat you to death, you little vixen. How dare you seduce my son?" Yushio also lost her mind. She pounced on Yizisu and grabbed her long hair. She scratched her face with her nails. Yizisu didn't want to be outdone. She wrestled with her. Yushio was old and wasn't as strong as her. She angrily pushed her. Yushio stumbled and hit the glass coffee table in the living room. Blood instantly gushed out from her forehead and stained the coffee table and carpet. Yushio rolled her eyes and fainted. "Ah!" Yizisu held her head and screamed in horror. Only her screams could be heard in the empty room. After a long time, she calmed down. She carefully walked forward and squatted in front of Yushio. Her face was covered in blood, which made people's hair stand on end. Yizisu's fingers trembled. She touched her nose. Although her breathing was weak, she was still alive. She immediately felt relieved. The siren of the ambulance echoed in the neighborhood. Several medical staff carried the unconscious Yushio into the ambulance. An hour later, Jiang Tianhao rushed to the hospital, panting. His mother was lying on the bed, unconscious. His wife was sitting on the bench in the corridor, wiping her tears miserably. Jiang Tianhao frowned impatiently. "What happened? Why did Mom suddenly faint?" Yizisu cried and threw herself into his arms. She sobbed, "Hubby, you're finally here. You scared me to death." The woman in his arms wiped her tears and snot all over him. He pulled her out of his arms forcefully and said with a straight face, "Let me ask you. Why did Mom suddenly faint?" Yizisu didn't want to tell him that she had pushed Yushio down. However, when Yushio woke up, she would definitely slander her. She might as well tell him now. She looked at Jiang Tianhao pitifully and sobbed, "Mother-in-law has been very dissatisfied with me recently. Today, she even criticized me in front of the people in the neighborhood. I was angry and argued with her. Then I slipped up and pushed my mom to the ground." Jiang Tianhao gritted his teeth. His eyes were burning with anger as he roared at her, "What's wrong with you? My mom is already so old. How could you treat her like this?" Yizisu's body trembled. She felt wronged and angry. She almost couldn't help but shout at him. Suddenly, a nurse walked out of the ward. The patient has woken up. You can go in and see her now. Upon hearing this, Jiang Tianhao immediately shook off Yizisu's hand. He didn't even look at her as he strode into the ward. Mom, are you feeling better? Jiang Tianhao sat beside Yu Xiu and asked with concern. Yu Xiu touched the gauze on her forehead. She frowned and looked at Shen Yin in pain. What's better? I was almost killed by your wife. Jiang Tianhao was ashamed and heartbroken. Mom, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I didn't manage her well. Yizisu had just entered the room and overheard the mother and son's conversation. She clenched her fists in hatred. Her large eyes were filled with tears as she said softly, I'm sorry, mother-in-law. I really didn't do it on purpose. Yu Xiu wouldn't let her off. She sneered and said sarcastically, Humph, mother-in-law. I don't dare. My ancestors must have accumulated good karma to let such a vicious woman like you marry into my family. I just entered your room and accidentally broke your perfume, and you're trying to kill me. Yizisu, oh Yizisu, how can you be so vicious, huh? Jiang Tianhao flew into a rage. He said with a dark face, Zisu, are you really going to hurt my mom over such a small matter? Yizisu's tears rolled down her cheeks. Rationality and humiliation were all thrown to the back of her mind. She cried and complained, of course not. Ask your mom what she's done. She criticized me in front of everyone in the neighborhood and said that my behavior was improper. She ordered me around like I was a servant. What right does she have? I'm your family's daughter-in-law, not your family's servant. She cried out all her grievances. She cried like a pear blossom in the rain. It was a tragic sight. Yu Xiu was so angry that she slapped the bed. She said angrily, listen to her, listen to her. What kind of things are they? Which family's daughter-in-law isn't filial to her parents-in-law and takes care of her husband? Why is she a servant in front of you? You're really a rich Mississippi. Even your mother-in-law can't order you around? I only ordered you around twice, and you hate me so much that you want to kill me. That's a glass coffee table. I'm bleeding out. Welfare, Songshu 566. Chapter 880. Every time she said a word, her chest rose and fell rapidly. She patted her chest with difficulty, and Jiang Tianhao was frightened. He comforted her. Mom, don't be agitated. Let's talk things over. Yu Xiu's finger trembled as she pointed at Yizisu, who was standing not too far away. Her lips trembled as she said, scram. Tell her to scram. I don't want to see that jinx. Yizisu's face turned pale. Jinx? She actually called her a jinx. She clenched her teeth and kept chattering. Her eyes were bloodshot with anger and her gaze was full of hatred. Jiang Tianhao looked up and met her venomous gaze. He frowned in disgust and said coldly, Zisu, go back first. You can come and see my mom when she calms down. Yizisu gritted her teeth and dug her nails into her palms. Although she had already realized that Jiang Tianhao did not love her, she still felt heartache in the face of his indifference and disgust. She ran out of the hospital crying. The road was full of people. She rushed through the crowd in panic, not knowing where to go. Screech, the sharp sound of brakes pierced her eardrums. The driver, who was less than 2 steps away from her, stuck his head out of the window and shouted, Do you want to die? Yizisu stood on the zebra crossing in a daze. She covered her mouth with both hands and burst into tears. Are you trying to scam me? I didn't even touch you. Get out of the way, or I'll call the police. The driver was furious and shouted at Yizisu, who was standing in front of the car in a daze. Yizisu cried even louder, as if she wanted to vent all the sadness and grievances in her heart. She did not know that there was a long line of cars behind her, and Tang Feng's car was also in this line. Tang Feng waited for a long time, but the car in front of him did not move. The sharp sound of car horns rose and fell one after another. He frowned slightly, opened the door, got out of the car, and strode forward. A familiar figure stood in the middle of the road. She was wearing a white dress, like a white lotus. She was crying like a pear blossom in the rain. Her thin and weak shoulders trembled violently, making people feel pity for her. Tang Feng stopped in his tracks. His handsome face looked ugly. He used to love her, but when he saw through her hypocrisy, he no longer loved her and had no more interactions with her. Although he didn't like her behavior, he couldn't just watch her block the traffic and stand here to die. He walked up to her and grabbed her wrist. Without saying a word, he dragged her to the side of the road. Yizisu raised her head with teary eyes. Suddenly, a pair of dark eyes barged into her. She cried in a daze. Big Brother Feng. Tang Feng let go of her wrist. If you want to die, don't do it here. With that cold sentence, he strode to his car. The traffic jam was already slowly moving forward. Yizisu was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, she turned around and jogged to catch up with Tang Feng. Tang Feng sat in the driver's seat and glanced sideways at the thick-skinned woman sitting in the front passenger seat. He frowned and moved his lips, but when he saw her tear-stained little face, he swallowed the words he wanted to say. In the narrow space, the atmosphere was oppressive. Occasionally, the sound of a woman sobbing could be heard. Tang Feng's eyebrows twitched a few times. He suddenly grabbed a box of tissues and threw it at her. His voice was terrifyingly cold. Where are you going? I, burp. Yizisu cried until she hiccuped. She looked pitifully at Tang Feng with a pair of wet eyes. I don't know. Tang Feng's frown deepened. I'll take you back to the Ji family. When the two words, Ji family, came out of his mouth, Ji Yuqi's face instantly appeared in his mind. His mood worsened. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. No. Yizisu shook her head with tears streaming down her face. I don't want to go back. Tang Feng's patience was about to run out. He gritted his teeth and said, hurry up and tell me your destination. I don't have time to fool around with you. The setting sun shone through the glass and covered his face with a gentle halo. Even though his face was gloomy, he was still so handsome that it made people's hearts palpitate. Yizisu suddenly regretted not choosing him back then. If she had chosen him, she wouldn't have fallen to this point. When the car stopped at the place Yizisu said, Tang Feng's handsome face darkened. This is the place you want to come to? A nightclub? Yizisu's eyes were slightly red and swollen, but it didn't affect her beauty. She bitterly curled her lips and had a different kind of charm. What's wrong with a nightclub? Are only men allowed to have fun and women can't? Why do I have to wait on his mom for him and bear his disdain when he's with another woman? Tang Feng had already guessed that she and Jiang Tianhao had a conflict. He thought it was just a small quarrel, but he didn't expect Jiang Tianhao to have an affair. He looked at her deeply and his cold voice became warmer. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Yizisu smiled bitterly and shook her head. Big Brother Feng, you don't have to comfort me. I have eyes and a heart. I can see everything clearly. It's just that I realized it too late. I gave up everything for him, but what did I get in return? You. Tang Feng admitted. For a moment, he was moved by her vicissitudes of life. His sexy lips pursed, and there was an imperceptible gentleness in his voice. It's not too late to realize it now. You can divorce him. No, it's too late. My reputation is ruined now. If I divorce him, which decent man will marry me? Yizisu's expression was wooden, but her mind was very clear. Not only would she not leave Jiang Tianhao, but she would also help him get the Ji family's property. By then, she would collect evidence of his infidelity, divorce him, and get half of the property. What was a man? As long as she had money, she could buy anything she wanted. Tang Feng shook his head disapprovingly. You're still young. You'll meet someone who truly loves you. Yizisu gazed at his handsome face with teary eyes. A gentle smile bloomed on her lips. She stroked his cheek with her slender fingers and said softly, "Big brother Feng, you're a good person." Even if he hated her, he was still willing to comfort her. He was really a good man. How great would it be if she had loved him back then? Tang Feng's eyes darkened. He avoided her fingers, got out of the car, and opened the door for her. In the end, Tang Feng was still worried about leaving Yizisu alone in the nightclub, so he sat at the bar and drank with her. The two people who were frustrated in love didn't talk at all. They just drank quietly. As the sky darkened, the number of people in the nightclub increased. The noise and laughter filled their ears. Yizisu was already drunk. Her eyes were blurry as she leaned against Tang Feng's chest. Her soft and boneless hands stroked his chest. She lifted her chin and giggled. "Big brother Feng, you're so good-looking." Tang Feng was also a bit drunk, but he was still rational. He held her shoulders and frowned. "You're drunk. I'll take you home." She giggled foolishly and wrapped her arms around his waist. She rubbed her head against his chest. "I'm not drunk. I'm very sober. Big brother Feng. I regret it. Let's be together, okay?" After she said that, tears overflowed from her eyes and wet his clothes. His body stiffened. After a long silence, he sighed and picked her up by the waist. The tall and straight man carried the petite and weak woman and walked out of the nightclub with unsteady steps. In the corner, an extraordinarily handsome man propped his chin up with one hand and watched them leave. His thin lips curled into a faint smile and he muttered in a low voice, "Interesting, really interesting." He leaned lazily against the soft sofa and tapped his slender fingers on the back of the chair. He thought for a moment. His eyes were as bright as stars as he skillfully pressed a string of numbers. "Hello. What's the matter?" The woman's clear voice came from the phone. The man's lips curved and he said lazily, "Miss, it's very boring to play an innocent little virgin. I want to play something more interesting. What do you think?" The woman sneered. "Aren't you already in your mouth? You're still bored?" The man rubbed his forehead with one hand and said resentfully, "Don't you think it's cruel for a pretty boy like me to accompany an old woman every day?" "Okay, tell me what you think." The man revealed a devilish smile. "What do you think of mother and daughter together?" The woman chuckled softly. "You have such a strong taste, but it's surprisingly interesting." The man's eyes lit up. "So, you approve it?" Up to you. But you're not allowed to make trouble for me." "Euler, miss, you have to believe in my professionalism." The man hung up the phone excitedly, his dark eyes flashing with a strange glow. The more interesting the prey was, the more exciting the game would be. Oh, he was confessing insincerely. He was really not a bad person. Ji Yuchi was also confessing. She threw the phone on the coffee table and picked up the tablet. Gigai shrank back into Shinja's arms and leaned against his chest comfortably. Her slender finger poked the man who was wearing black-rimmed glasses and reading the newspaper. Her voice was sickeningly sweet. "Ah, am I quite bad?" Shinja caught her finger and his deep eyes, which were covered by his glasses, lit up. He pondered seriously for a moment and said slowly, "You do seem to be quite bad." Ji Yuchi was agitated. She turned around and straddled his lap. She wrapped her arms around his neck and gritted her teeth angrily. "It's too late for you to realize that now. Once you've boarded my pirate ship, you can forget about getting off, understand?" She poked his expressionless face with her finger. "Get on." The man's eyes shone even brighter and his deep voice was filled with mischief. "Hey, you're focusing on the wrong thing. Don't think too much and don't think of impure things." Her words seemed to have piqued a certain someone's interest. He wrapped his arms around her waist and lifted her up slightly so that she was straddling his waist. Her legs seemed to have touched something that was quietly awakening. She nervously moved to the side. His scalding hot palms held her tightly against his body. His deep and husky voice was mesmerizing. "Be good, don't move." Ji Yuchi's face was red and she buried her head in his chest, not daring to look at his lustful eyes. He hugged her and panted heavily. His throbbing between his legs was unusually obvious. She blushed even more and her fingertips trembled. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzzing. Do you need my help? Beauty novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 881. Large drops of sweat slid down his handsome cheeks. He was having a hard time holding it in. His eyes were dark and gloomy, and his sexy lips were pressed against her neck. He uttered a few broken syllables from the depths of his chest. Oh, how can I help? Stupid. Did he need a girl to teach him this kind of thing? In the end, Ji Yuqi, who felt sorry for him, used practical actions to help him. When he was in her hands, his handsome face was tinged with a faint blush. He sucked on her lips, and his hoarse voice was full of tenderness. He shamelessly declared, Chi-Chi, I'm yours now. You have to be responsible for me. Ji Yuqi also patted his back shamelessly and said seriously, you've been mine for a long time. You have to keep your chastity for me in the future, dear. He buried his head in her neck and chuckled. Chi-Chi, you can be more reserved. Her charming eyes narrowed dangerously. You don't like it? I like it very much. He nibbled on her neck. His mesmerizing voice was intoxicating, and his breath made her blush. As long as it's Chi-Chi, I like it. A strong sense of happiness surged in her chest, and her heart was unbelievably soft. Ji Yuqi hugged the man who belonged to her tightly. She was extremely grateful to God for giving her a chance to do it all over again. In her delirious state, she heard his extremely gentle voice. Chi-Chi, marry me. She smiled, and her eyes were glistening with tears. Okay. As soon as she said that, her lips turned cold. The kiss went from light to deep, mixed with a man's bone-deep feelings. It was a love that would last a lifetime. Ugh! My head hurts. Yi Zissou woke up from the darkness. She reached out and rubbed the wall. After a long while, she found the light switch. Click. The soft light shone on her, and she closed her eyes uncomfortably. What's wrong? The man's hoarse voice rang in her ears. Then, a pair of arms hugged her from behind, and his hot body pressed against her back. She suddenly trembled, and her beautiful eyes widened. This voice, she turned her head stiffly and was suddenly met with a pair of confused eyes that had just woken up. Then, she saw the man's tall nose bridge and handsome face. Then, she looked down and saw his bare chest, Xiao. Xiaoyihan. Yi Zissou called out this name with a trembling voice. She panicked and stepped back, but his arm around her waist was too hard, and she couldn't do so. The dazed look in Xiaoyihan's eyes gradually dissipated, and a faint smile appeared. He raised his hand and ruffled her hair. He whispered, What's the matter? Are you confused from sleeping? Yi Zissou's words, of you, we. Hearing this, his handsome face instantly blushed, and he coughed uncomfortably. His voice was full of grievance. Did you forget what happened last night? Yi Zissou's head was about to explode. Although she did plan to cheat on Jiang Tianhao, the person she wanted to cheat on was Tang Feng. Last night, she was clearly hugging Tang Feng, so why was the person sleeping next to her when she woke up with Xiaoyihan? Who could explain this? Xiaoyihan had been paying attention to her expression. When he saw that she looked like she was having a headache, he sighed sadly. Looks like you really forgot what happened last night. Ha! No wonder. Who asked you to like Tang Feng? Last night, you were hugging me and calling his name non-stop. What was with this, betrayed by your lover, tone? Yi Zissou wanted to vomit blood. Her long nails dug deep into his shoulders as she said with difficulty, I'm sorry. I really don't remember. Please tell me what happened last night. Xiaoyihan's expression became more and more sorrowful. His eyes were filled with strong accusation as he slowly said, Last night, you and Tang Feng got drunk at a bar. Tang Feng carried you and wanted to take you home, but he drank too much. As soon as he walked out of the bar, He fell and the two of you fell on the ground. He paused for a moment and quickly glanced at her chest. He coughed and continued, the buttons on your shirt burst open, revealing, a few men wanted to hit on you and surrounded you. I happened to pass by and chased them away. Then, I called a car to take Tang Feng home. I wanted to take you back to the Ji family, but I didn't expect you to hug me and cry loudly, saying that you didn't want to go home. Yizisu rubbed her forehead with a headache. After the hangover, her head hurt unbearably. She tried hard to recall, but there were only a few remnant images in her mind. For example, Tang Feng carried her, someone put her into the car, and she seemed to have done something embarrassing like hugging someone's leg and crying. After that, she had no recollection of it at all. She flew into a rage out of humiliation and vented her anger on Xiaoyihan. Even if I said that I don't want to go home, you can't do this to me. Xiaoyihan widened his eyes in surprise. He didn't understand and asked, what did I do to you? Yizisu was embarrassed and angry at the same time. Her cheeks were red and she bit her lip. That's right. Xiaoyihan suddenly realized. You're talking about the time we slept together. Yizisu glared at him fiercely. He suddenly burst into laughter, laughing so hard that tears rolled down his cheeks. Zisu, your imagination is too rich. We didn't do anything last night. No, to be precise, you did. You vomited all over me. It took me a lot of effort to change you into clean clothes. Change into clean clothes? Yizisu was stunned. Then, her cheeks turned red. He actually helped her change her clothes. It was too embarrassing. She took the opportunity to touch her body. Sure enough, her body was wrapped in a loose sleeping robe. She opened her mouth and said, since nothing happened, why are you lying with me? And, you were naked. Xiaoyihan sounded aggrieved. You dirtied my nightgown, wore the only clean nightgown I had left, and slept on my only bed. What do you think I should do? Yizisu looked down in embarrassment and said softly, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. His broad palm rubbed her hair. His voice was relaxed and happy. It's okay. As long as you don't misunderstand me as a bad person. She looked up and smiled at him gently. Thank you so much for last night. Brother Ihan, can I trouble you with something? What is it? The corners of his lips turned up slightly. His bright smile warmed her heart. She pursed her lips shyly. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly. Can you help me get my clothes? He frowned in distress. Your clothes are dirty. Why don't you wear mine first? I'll go out and buy you a new set. Thank you very much. Xiaoyihan brought her a white shirt and a pair of beach shorts. After she changed, she saw herself in the mirror and was too embarrassed to go out. She dawdled in the bathroom for a long time. Xiaoyihan finished making breakfast and knocked on the door to call her. She bit her lip and walked out boldly. The woman in front of him had a slender figure. Her hair was tied up high, revealing her exquisite collarbone. The white shirt covered her legs and beach shorts. At first glance, one could only see her slender legs, which made one's imagination run wild. He couldn't help but want to explore the scenery under the shirt. Her exquisite and graceful figure was faintly discernible, revealing a different kind of charm. Xiaoyihan didn't hide the amazement in his eyes. He chuckled. A beauty is a beauty. Even if you're wearing a simple white shirt, you're still beautiful beyond compare. Which woman didn't like to be praised for being beautiful? Yizisu's heart was sweet, but she was also a little embarrassed. She stroked the hair by her ear and pursed her lips into a smile. Don't joke around. Ihan Gij is experienced and knowledgeable. What kind of beauty haven't you seen? Xiaoyihan's eyes gradually deepened, and the smile on his lips became gentler. I've seen many, but you're the only one who has entered my heart. These words sounded a little ambiguous. Yizisu couldn't help but be startled. Just as she was about to probe, he quickly looked away. His cheek seemed to be stained with a faint blush. He coughed and said, "Eat breakfast. Otherwise, it'll get cold later." Cheese and jam sandwiches, fried eggs, fried sausages, and warm milk. They all looked delicious. Yizisu's movements were elegant and didn't make a single sound. The man opposite her had even more standard dining etiquette. He was like a European aristocrat. His simple eating movements made people feel as if they were looking at a piece of art. She took a sip of milk and wiped the corner of her mouth with a napkin. She smiled and said, "I didn't expect Ihan Gij to be so good at cooking." Xiao Ihan smiled meaningfully. "This is the first time I've cooked for a girl. This is the first time I've taken in a drunk girl. This is also the first time I've let a girl wear my clothes. You've broken so many of my firsts. How do you plan to repay me?" Yizisu had heard from Chen Tingfang that Xiao Ihan had never been in a relationship before. At that time, she didn't believe it. Now that she heard him say this, she couldn't help but tease him. "Then I'm really honored. Why don't I introduce a girlfriend to Ihan Gij as repayment? We shouldn't let a good man like you take advantage of an outsider." The smile on Xiao Ihan's handsome face deepened. His long fingers naturally rubbed her cheek and he said gently, "Since I can't let an outsider take advantage of me, how about you take advantage of me?" Yizisu was shocked. She hurriedly avoided his fingers and smiled awkwardly. "Ihan Gij, you can't joke about this. I'm already married. If other people hear this, it will cause misunderstandings." Xiao Ihan's smile froze. His eyes dimmed. He stiffly withdrew his hand and said in a bleak voice, "It's just a joke. Don't take it to heart." He got up and pushed the chair away. "Rest here for a while. I'll go out and buy some clothes for you. I'll be back soon." His tall figure walked towards the door. His back looked a little lonely. Yizisu stared at his back in a daze. Her heart was full of bitterness. Look, there were so many people who loved her in the past. Why did she choose Jiang Tianhao? After being in a daze for a long time, she suddenly smiled faintly. At least the man who loved her in the past still loved her now. In less than half an hour, Xiao Ihan returned. He was carrying a bag of high-end women's clothing. It was a white silk dress that reached her knees. It fit Yizisu perfectly, as if it was tailor-made for her. Awesome novel, Songshu 566. Chapter 882. Her long eyelashes fluttered, and the corners of her lips curled up. "It fits. How did you know my size?" He stared at her with his deep eyes and smiled. "There's a size on the back of your shirt. I noticed it last night." The smile on Yizisu's face became sweeter, and something broke out from the bottom of her heart. Under his affectionate gaze, she shyly lowered her eyes. The space between the two of them was filled with pink bubbles, and the room was filled with an ambiguous atmosphere. Xiao Ihan used his right hand to lift her chin, lowered his head, and slowly moved closer to her cheek. Her clear black and white eyes were wide open, and her gaze was confused, as if she didn't know what he wanted to do. He chuckled softly, and suddenly used his left hand to cover her eyes, and his cold lips covered her. A numb feeling spread from where the two of them were pressed against each other. Yizisu couldn't help but tremble. She hurriedly placed her hands on his waist and wanted to push him away, but he held her tightly in his arms. His soft lips tossed and turned affectionately. Slowly, she sank into his gentleness. In the quiet room, it was warm and ambiguous. The sweet atmosphere lingered between the two of them. Their heartbeats quickened, and their breathing became erratic. In a daze, the two of them caressed each other without any rhyme or reason. Suddenly, a melodious ringtone sounded. Yizisu seemed to wake up from a dream, and she suddenly pushed Xiao Ihan away. Her cheeks were flushed, and her eyes were watery with a layer of spring. Her slightly swollen red lips parted slightly, and it was indescribably charming. Xiao Ihan's dark eyes were filled with lust. His slightly rough fingers gently brushed against her lips, and his actions were extremely seductive. Yizisu's heart suddenly shrank, and she only felt her whole body heat up. She hurriedly avoided his scorching gaze and rushed to the coffee table. She picked up her phone and took a deep breath to calm her frantic heartbeat. "Hello." The voice that came out of her mouth was soft and hoarse, and even she was shocked. She hurriedly patted her burning cheeks and forced herself to return to normal as soon as possible. On the other end of the line, Jiang Tianhao paused for a moment before asking gently, "Honey, where did you go last night?" Yi Zhisu sneered in her heart. She ran away from home yesterday, and he only called to ask about her today. He really cared about her. She replied indifferently, "At a friend's house." Jiang Tianhao's tone tightened. "A male or female friend?" Yi Zhisu chuckled when she heard that. Her laughter was a little sad. "What do you think? After we started dating, did I still have any close male friends?" His tone softened. "Honey, it was my fault yesterday. I was too harsh with my words. Where are you? I'll pick you up." She looked coldly at the scenery outside the window and said softly, "No need. I don't want to delay your work. I'll go back by myself. How can work be more important than you, my wife? During this period of time, I've made you work hard." Jiang Tianhao's coaxing skills are first class. As long as he wants, he can coax people to be obedient. Yi Zhisu chuckled and did not say anything. After waiting for him to coax her, she changed the topic. "Hubby, how's mother-in-law?" "Mom is much better now. She can be discharged tomorrow." Jiang Tianhao's voice became gentler. "Honey, Mom is old and has a bad temper. She's made you suffer. For my sake, you have to bear with her a little, okay?" Okay, hubby. I'll go to the hospital to accompany mother-in-law later." "What kind of soup does she like?" "How about chicken soup?" Yi Zhisu's obedient voice fell into Jiang Tianhao's ears. He smiled in satisfaction. "Chicken soup then." It's my fortune to be able to marry such an understanding wife like you." Yi Zhisu pouted coquettishly. "You're so annoying. You only know how to smooth talk. Oh, honey, I love you." "Hubby, I love you too." The husband and wife each had their own ulterior motives. When Yi Zhisu hung up the phone, she was the only one left in the room. She saw a note on the table. On the note, there was a handsome handwriting, "I don't want to hear you talking to him lovingly. Lock the door when you leave." She held the thin piece of paper in her hand. Through the last word and the strength of the pen on the back of the paper, she seemed to see his frown. Suddenly, she felt a little empty in her heart. Ji Yuqi stared at the ring on her finger and giggled foolishly. Qing Sang threw her a look of disdain and said lightly, "Boss, this is the 5th time you've been distracted. I beg of you, can you be more serious during the meeting?" Ji Yuqi returned her a look that said, "You know what I mean." The happy smile on her face was too bright. "Qing Sang, Shenji proposed to me." Qing Sang held her forehead with one hand. She had a headache. "Boss, you've said this to me 3 times. I beg of you, quickly go back to normal, okay?" Qing Sang really couldn't understand this. "I can't wait for the whole world to see my happiness, look." Was love really so magical? Could it make a rational person go insane? She silently guessed that young Master Shin must be in a state of madness at this moment. She guessed right. Young Master Shin had successfully become a psychopath. Whether it was a big meeting or a small one, this boss's mind-wandering had become a common occurrence. Sometimes, he would touch the ring on his finger and giggle foolishly. Sometimes, he would frown and think about something important. Sometimes, he would sigh and say, "It's not time yet. As expected, I still have to wait." Sometimes, he would smile and mutter to himself, "Chi Chi has finally become my woman." Ah Zhe and the others were speechless. "Boss, we seem to have heard something incredible." In the end, they couldn't stand it anymore. They sent Ah Zhe as a representative to tactfully advise the boss, "Young master, you seem to have been too emotional recently. It has attracted the attention of Shen Yu and Shen Jianhao. Shen's expression turned cold. He finally pulled himself out of the state of madness. His handsome face was as cold as ice. This was why he hadn't announced his relationship with Yuqi to the public. Shen Jianhao and his son wouldn't let go of any evidence that could be used to threaten him. A cold aura erupted from his body. He said in a deep voice, "Keep an eye on them. If they dare to harm Qi, I don't mind putting righteousness before family." Such a pair of father and son didn't deserve to be his family at all. The press conference held by Free Clothing Company was very successful. Not only did it receive many media reports, but it also received the support of many business bigwigs. Even the most famous fashion designers praised it. Ji Yuqi sat below the stage and looked at the designers on the stage surrounded by flowers and applause. She couldn't help but smile. After this promotion, their company, Free, had finally entered the market and would definitely shine. Free Clothing Company quickly set up counters in major shopping malls. Advertisements and posters filled every corner of the city. The trend of promoting comfort and freedom swept through. On the first day of the launch, there was a situation of out of stock. In just a short month, Free had gained a firm foothold in the clothing industry and faintly led the trend of fashion trends. The designers in the company were also in high demand and became the target of other companies poaching. Ji Yuqi didn't mind. Instead, she told the designers frankly, "If you feel that other companies can give you better development opportunities, I won't force you to stay. But for those who stay, you will realize your value in Free, including economic and social value." Ji Yuqi didn't lie to them. She gave them a salary that was 10% higher than their peers, not to mention a generous bonus. As for social value, Free had set up a charity fund. For every piece of clothing sold, they would donate 1 yuan to the poor mountainous areas. When they donated, the designers had the right to sign their names. This greatly stimulated their enthusiasm for work. Moreover, none of the designers were poached by other companies. As a new company, Free attracted the attention of many people, including the leader of the clothing industry, G Group. When Ji Yuqi returned home from school, she saw that her father, who usually left early and returned late, had returned home early. He was holding a newspaper in his hand and his brows were slightly furrowed. He seemed to be troubled by something. She took advantage of his distraction and sat beside him. She tilted her head and looked at him with a smile. "Dad, you're back early today." Ji Bowen's brows relaxed. He casually placed the newspaper on the coffee table and teased, "I can't always be a workaholic. I've become estranged from my family." "No, Ahan and I love Dad the most." Ji Yuqi smiled and flattered. Ji Bowen couldn't help but laugh. The gloominess in his eyes dissipated. Ji Yuqi hugged his arm and said coquettishly, "Dad, I saw that you didn't look too good just now. Is there something bothering you?" Ji Bowen had never told his family about the company's troubles in the past because he didn't want them to worry. However, Yuqi had already grown up. She would take over the company sooner or later. It was a good thing to let her know about it earlier. Thinking about this, he slowly said, "Recently, a clothing company called Free has appeared in Ing City. Although this company has just been established and its scale is relatively small, its strength is not to be underestimated. The company's executives all believe that it will grow into a strong competitor for the G Group. Therefore, someone proposed to acquire Free." Ji Yuqi frowned. "I don't think it's a good idea. If we acquire every potential competitor, not only will we have to bear a high cost, we will also have to bear a certain amount of risk. Moreover, for the company itself, it won't form an effective competitive environment. It won't be good for the company's long-term development." Ji Bowen's eyes lit up. He smiled and said, "I didn't expect my daughter to have the same thoughts as me. I don't agree with the acquisition plan either. The clothing brands under the G Group have been the number one for more than 10 years. Without the stimulation of competition, their designs are also not very innovative. I'm afraid that they won't be able to adapt to the trends soon." "Yes, yes." Ji Yuqi nodded vigorously. "Dad, I think that the G group should inject more fresh blood. Also, other than the traditional market, e-commerce is also a fat piece of meat. We can't ignore it. At this time, e-commerce was already on the rise. However, just like other high-end brands, the G group didn't pay much attention to online sales. Ji Yuqi knew how popular Taobao was later, so she reminded him this time. Ji Bowen smiled and patted her head. The company is already planning to operate in this direction. Chi-Chi, you've really grown up and have your own ideas. This is very good. When you graduate, come to the company and help Dad. Okay. Ji Yuqi blinked. Dad, I'll let you see that your daughter is very amazing. She didn't want to tell her father that she was the boss behind Free. When the time was right, she would give him a surprise. Ji Bowen was amused by her playful appearance and laughed heartily. Awesome novel, Shinwoo 799. Chapter 883. His laughter stopped abruptly. His dark gaze fell on Yuchi's middle finger. A beautiful diamond ring was sparkling. His expression turned ugly and his voice was stern. Yuchi, what's with that ring? Ji Yuchi retracted her finger uncomfortably and said softly, Dad, I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't find the right opportunity. She raised her head and met his gaze with determination. Biting her lip, she said, I'm in love. Ji Bowen's expression changed a few times. Finally, he snorted coldly. Just in love? Ji Yuchi leaned in front of him and smiled ingratiatingly. Her eyes curved into crescents as she said carefully, I agreed to his proposal. Ji Bowen's heart was burning with anger. His daughter had been abducted by that brat and he didn't even know about it. He opened his mouth and was about to fly into a rage when Yuchi hurriedly begged for mercy. Dad, if you want to teach me a lesson, why don't you go to the study? Looking at his daughter's pitiful little face, Ji Bowen's heart softened. He suppressed the anger in his heart and sighed. Tell me, which family's brat is it? I'll say the ugly words first. If that brat doesn't enter my eyes, even if you agree to his proposal, you can forget about being together. Ji Yuchi pouted and blinked. Her voice was light and playful as she said, Daddy, do you like the eldest young master of the Shin family? Ji Bowen was startled. When Shinja disregarded his own safety and blocked the sulfuric acid for Chi-Chi, he felt that something was wrong. Most people wouldn't be able to risk their own lives to protect others. He didn't expect them to really be in love. After a moment, he said with a gloomy expression, It seems that you two have been together for a long time. You actually hid it from me for so long. Ji Yuchi was full of guilt. Dad, I'm sorry. I have my reasons, forget it. Girls have grown up and should have their own thoughts. Dad doesn't blame you. Although he said that, Ji Bowen still felt a little lonely in his heart. The daughter he had treasured for so long was going to leave him one day and go into the arms of others to start a new life. The corners of his lips curled up as he caressed his daughter's hair. His voice was gentle as he said, That boy from the Shin family is a capable man. He's good to you too. I'm relieved to hand you over to him. Daddy. Ji Yuchi was speechless. Her eyes were red and covered with a layer of water. She blinked back her tears and threw herself into his embrace. Daddy, thank you. Ji Bowen patted her back. At this point, as a father-in-law, he had to meet his future son-in-law. Chi-Chi, is Shinja free recently? Ask him out and we'll have a meal together. Okay, I'll ask him out. Ji Yuchi blinked. Dad, can you not tell Auntie Chen for the time being? We plan to get married after I graduate. We don't want too many people to know about our relationship. Ji Bowen nodded. That's good too. Do Shinja's parents know about your relationship? They don't know yet. The situation in the Shin family is a little complicated. Ji Yuchi hesitated. Ji Bowen thought for a moment and knew what was going on. Shin Jianhao's first wife gave birth to his eldest son, Shinja, but she passed away a few years later. His new wife, Tao Shirin, gave birth to his second son, Shinyu. Although in the eyes of outsiders, the Shin family was happy and blissful, there were many discord in the wealthy families. Who knew what was going on behind the scenes? After dinner, Ji Yuqi lazily lay on the sofa and chatted with Shinjo on the phone. When she heard his magnetic and affectionate voice coming from the other end of the line, she couldn't help but smile. Her exquisite eyes were full of smiles. Ah, I told my dad about us. He wants to see you. Okay, when? Shinjo touched the ring on his finger and a crazy smile appeared on his face. His voice was gentle and charming. Ji Yuqi rolled a few times on the sofa. Tomorrow night at 7:00 at Zuixiang restaurant. Don't be late. Okay, got it. His little girl's soft voice was right next to his ear. He couldn't help but miss her. The corners of his lips moved slightly and her name came out from between his lips. Chi-Chi, I miss you. Ji Yuqi's cheeks blushed. She said softly, I miss you too. The person on the other end of the line was silent for a few seconds and suddenly said, wait for me. Huh? Ji Yuqi didn't understand. She blinked and was about to ask again when the phone beeped. Oh, that jerk Shinjo. He actually hung up the phone without knowing why. Ouch! She punched the cushion in frustration. After venting her anger, she ran into the bathroom to take a shower. Half an hour later, she walked out of the bathroom with wet hair and a towel wrapped around her body. In the blink of an eye, she saw a dark figure jump in from outside the window. She was so shocked that she almost screamed. When she took a closer look, her eyes almost popped out of their sockets. She opened her mouth in disbelief. Aja, why are you here? The little girl in front of him had just taken a shower. Her wet hair was wrapped in a towel and her entire body was wrapped in only a towel. Her fair skin was slightly red from the steam rising from the shower. Her exquisite collarbones, beautiful neck and slender legs were breathtakingly beautiful. Her charming almond-shaped eyes widened in surprise. Her pink lips were slightly parted and her dazed expression was so adorable that it made people want to pinch her cheeks. Shinjo walked closer to her with his long legs. There was a suppressed flame in his dark eyes that lit up his eyes. Ji Yuqi's heart trembled and she instinctively retreated. He had already opened his arms and pulled her into his embrace. His cold lips kissed her cheek and he whispered, I really wanted to see you, so I came here. Ji Yuqi blinked hard and finally understood what he meant when he said, wait for me. The next second, she suddenly reacted. Her cheeks flushed red and she pushed her hands against his chest. She said hurriedly, let go of me. I'm going to change. Don't change. It's very beautiful. His cold lips slowly moved down her chin to her neck. His low voice was like the music played by a cello. Don't. Her voice trembled as she frantically grabbed his right hand that was caressing her waist. He did not continue the movement of his hand. Jun Yen buried himself behind her neck and sniffed her body fragrance. His nose exhaled a scalding hot breath, just like a kitten that could not eat fish. It was stuffy and somewhat irritable. I still have to endure it for a long time. How long would it take to endure until the two of them got married? She could clearly feel the hard thing that was pressed against her. She leaned into his embrace and did not dare to move. She gritted her teeth and braced herself to answer, actually, you can try using your hands. After saying that, she wanted to bite off her own tongue. Why did she have to be his teacher and teach him such things? Ji Yuqi was so embarrassed that she was about to cry. Help me. His voice was hoarse, and all the muscles in his body were stiff. He held her hand and covered the uncomfortable part of his body. Her palm was hot and her head buzzed as if it was about to explode. She could hear his low and sexy moans in her ears. It was like a demon in the dark night singing in a low voice. She had only helped him once and he was already so familiar with it. He bloomed passionately in her palm. She was so embarrassed that she closed her eyes tightly. She really wanted to dig a hole and bury herself in it. There was a saying that she reaped what she sowed. The sweet smell gradually dissipated. Ji Yuqi stiffly stroked his back and coughed uncomfortably. Let's wash up. She had just taken a shower and it seemed like she needed to take another one. The two of them cleaned up. Ji Yuqi's cheeks were still red. She pretended to be calm as she wiped her hair. However, the towel in her hand was snatched away by a big hand. Shenja naturally pulled her to sit on his lap and wiped her hair with the towel. Then, he dried her hair with the hairdryer. A warm breeze of moderate temperature slowly brushed past Ji Yuqi's head. His slender fingers weaved through her hair, stirring up a tingling sensation at the roots of her hair, causing ripples in her heart. She lowered her head in embarrassment. Her flushed cheeks looked even more charming under the soft light. Chi-Chi, will you be angry that I didn't introduce you to the Shin family? Unknowingly, the hairdryer had been replaced with a comb and was gently combing her hair. She raised her head. Her eyes were bright and full of smiles. Silly, do you think I'll be angry? The traditional marriage of meeting the parents and receiving their blessings was not suitable for them at all. She smiled. As long as the people we care about give us their blessings, that's enough. Bits of resplendent light blossomed in his obsidian-like eyes, and then spread to his lips. He lovingly kissed her hair, and his heart was filled with warmth. It was getting late. Ji Yuqi urged him to leave, but he hugged her domineeringly and refused to let go. I'll leave after you fall asleep. Ji Yuqi had no choice but to compromise. Under his expectant gaze, Gigai lay down on the bed. He quickly lay down beside her and hugged her waist. Gigai, go to sleep. How could she sleep while being hugged by a moving stove? Ji Yuqi closed her eyes and silently counted the stars in her heart. When she counted to 560, her mind was still very clear. She helplessly opened her eyes and looked at the man beside her. His jet-black hair fell softly on his forehead and his outstanding facial features were perfect. His deep eyes were slightly closed and his high nose bridge was exquisite like a sculpture. His fair face was tainted with a layer of holy light under the soft light. He's obviously a man, but he's even better looking than me, Ji Yuqi murmured softly. Her fingers landed on his high nose bridge and gently tapped it. Hey, your eyelashes are so long too. Those curly eyelashes were like a small brush. How could they grow on a man's eyes? Ji Yuqi sighed softly. Her fingers touched it gently and quickly retracted, afraid that she would wake him up. Do you like it? It was a low, intoxicated voice. She nodded earnestly. I like it. As soon as she finished speaking, she sensed that something was amiss. The man whom she was scrutinizing had already opened his eyes. There was a smile in his dark eyes. He tightened his arms around her waist and pulled her closer to him. Since Chi-Chi doesn't want to sleep, let's do something else. Oh, she was caught peeping. How embarrassing. Ji Yuqi's eyes flickered. She pressed her hands against his chest and said in a muffled voice, No, hurry up and go back. Welfare, Shinwu 799. Chapter 884. His tone was bleak, as if he was hurt by her words. You don't want to be alone with me? I just want to spend more time with you. She knew that he was doing this on purpose, but she still felt sorry for him. She stroked his hair and explained, No, it's already so late. You should rest. You still have to go to the office tomorrow. He insisted, I'll leave after you fall asleep. She said helplessly, but I have insomnia. I can't sleep. It's okay. I have a way to make you fall asleep faster. The corners of his lips curled up and his bright eyes stared at her lips with ill intentions. He intertwined his breath with hers. He kissed her until she was dizzy and her whole body was soft. She felt really tired. She thought that Shinja had become naughty. Her eyelids couldn't hold up anymore, and she gently closed them. Baby, sleep well. A feather-light kiss brushed across her forehead, and a gentle voice entered her dream. Zuixiang Restaurant was a very stylish private restaurant in Ying City. There was a limit to the number of customers they received every day. Naturally, the dishes here were also famous for being delicious. In the antique private room, an elegant fragrance lingered in the air. Shenja was wearing a high-end tailor-made suit. He sat upright and his casual movements revealed elegance. His handsome and cold facial features, sword-like eyebrows, and proud and handsome nose bridge, were all perfect masterpieces of God. When Ji Bowen walked into the private room with his daughter and saw this scene, he nodded in his heart. But judging from his appearance, Shenja was indeed a rare good man who was worthy of Yuchi. "Hello, uncle." Shenja stood up and greeted him politely. After Ji Bowen nodded, his smiling gaze turned to Ji Yuchi. His words and actions revealed his excellent upbringing. Ji Bowen's satisfaction with him increased, but he didn't show it on his face. He said lightly, "Sorry to keep you waiting." "Not long. I just arrived." Shenja didn't say much, but Ji Bowen could feel his sincerity and respect. He personally poured a cup of tea and presented it to Ji Bowen. "Uncle, the tiguanyin here is not bad. Try it." Tiguanyin was Ji Bowen's favorite tea. Ji Yuchi saw the satisfaction in her father's eyes and couldn't help but smile. She blinked at Shenja in appreciation. She thought that with Shenja's personality, he wouldn't try to please her father. She didn't expect him to do it. She was happy that he respected her father so much. Although Shenja and Ji Bowen did not talk much, the atmosphere was surprisingly harmonious. After dinner, Ji Yuchi saw that her father wanted to speak but stopped. She guessed that he wanted to talk to Shenja alone, so she smiled and got up. "Dad, I'm going outside to make a call. You guys can talk." After Ji Yuchi left, Ji Bowen's face became serious. He stared at Shenja and went straight to the point. "Shenja, do you really like my daughter?" Shenja's lips curled up slightly. "I won't marry anyone else." These simple words came out of his mouth, but they sounded powerful. Ji Bowen was unmoved. His gaze was deep and dark as he said in a deep voice, "I can't let my daughter come to any harm." "What makes you think that you can protect her for the rest of her life?" In an instant, Shenja's aura suddenly changed. His shocking eyes carried a dangerous message, and the space between his brows was dyed with a peerless arrogance and nobility. It was as if the entire world had submitted to him. He didn't say much, but slowly spat out two words, "I can." Every person with power had their own kind of aura. Ji Bowen could feel that kind of aura from him at this moment. It was arrogant and unruly, cold and domineering, and noble like a king. This was the real Shenja, who stood at the top of everyone. Ji Bowen looked at him deeply. "I don't want my daughter to marry into a dragon's pool or a tiger's den. Do you understand what I mean?" Ji Bowen was not an easy person to deal with. Last night, Yuchi told him about her relationship with Shenja. He used his connections and even old friends that he had not contacted for a long time to find out about the Shin family. In the end, his guess was confirmed. The Shin family was not as harmonious as it seemed on the surface. Shenja was very capable to be able to live safely until today. Shenja's gaze changed slightly. His expression was solemn as he said solemnly, "I won't let my woman suffer with me. Before Chi-Chi marries me, I will deal with those problems. Remember your promise." When Ji Yuchi returned to the private room, their conversation had already ended. Although she did not know what they had talked about, she realized that her father's attitude towards Shenja had changed. He was no longer the polite and distant person he had been in the beginning. Instead, he was treating Shenja with the gentleness of an elder towards a younger generation. He was even in a good mood and allowed the two of them to continue their date. Of course, they could not stay out all night. Ji Yuchi's hand was held by Shenja as she watched her father's car drive away. She asked curiously, "My father seems to like you a lot. What did you talk about?" Shenja raised his hand and tucked the hair by her cheek behind her ear. The corner of his lips curved. "You have a very good father." Then, he repeated their conversation to her word for word. Ji Yuchi's heart warmed. She had always been glad that she had a father who loved her. Her eyes sparkled as she said childishly, "My father is naturally the best father in the world." Shenja's slightly cold fingers brushed her nose as he said seriously, "Your husband is also the best husband in the world." The slightly sad atmosphere was broken by him and only left with laughter. Her eyes were curved and her smile was as beautiful as a peach. She held his cheeks with both hands and teased, "Old Lady Wang is selling melons and praising her own melons. Young Master Shen, your skin has become thicker again." His handsome face was rubbed out of shape by her, but he did not stop her from rubbing it. He was good-natured and allowed her to rub it. His tone was as serious as ever. "Since you like my face so much, then kiss it." She laughed until she was out of breath. "Hey, is there a cause and effect between the two?" "Of course there is. Just like this." As soon as his voice fell, his cold lips had already landed on her face. He whispered softly in her ear, "I like it so much that I can't help but want to take a bite." On the streets at night, neon lights flickered. At the intersection where people were coming and going, a tall and handsome figure held a petite girl in his arms. He protected her in his embrace. Other than him, no one else could see her blushing face that was as beautiful as a flower. Even acquaintances who passed by could not recognize Ji Yuqi, who was tightly hugged by Shinja. When Yizisu and Xiaoyihan passed by them, they only glanced at them indifferently before returning all their attention to Xiaoyihan. Ever since that ambiguous morning, Xiaoyihan had been looking for all kinds of reasons to ask Yizisu out. Yizisu was already physically and mentally exhausted from being tortured by Yu Xiu. She had also completely lost all hope for Jiang Tianhao and was in a period of emotional emptiness. Coincidentally, a man who could give her warmth and make her happy had appeared. Of course, she would not reject him. At first, she would still pretend to be reserved and evade him. However, when he had several coincidental encounters with her in the shopping mall, campus, and bars, she allowed him to carefully hold her hand. Xiaoyihan took Yizisu to an extremely lively bar. The colorful lights were flashing and sexy dancers were strip-teasing on the poles. A group of wild men below the stage were hooting. The atmosphere was hot and fiery. For a beauty like Yizisu, even if she had a male companion by her side, when she walked into the bar, she was like a little white rabbit walking into a pack of wolves. She attracted a lot of hot gazes. The naked desire in their eyes almost tore her apart. Yizisu had never been to such a daring place. She was a little afraid in her heart, but more than that, she was faintly excited. She suddenly felt like she had stepped into a new world. That kind of life where she was the center of attention and sought after by men made her blood begin to boil. Xiaoyihan turned his head and saw the fire hidden in her eyes. The corners of his lips curled up mockingly. The so-called White Lotus goddess, after taking off her outer clothes, was nothing more than a loose woman. The wild music started to play. All kinds of men and women on the dance floor swayed their waists and buttocks in the wind. There were already men and women who could not help but hide in the corner and make out discordant sounds. Yizisu and Xiaoyihan were also on the dance floor. They were using the wild dance to release their emotions. Unknowingly, the deafening electronic music turned into soothing music. Xiaoyihan stretched out his long arm and pulled Yizisu into his embrace. She was still in a state of excitement. Her beautiful eyes were sparkling and her cheeks were rosy, just like a cute apple. Xiaoyihan's eyes darkened. He slowly leaned over and kissed her lips. She subconsciously wanted to push him away, but he held her hand tightly and deepened the kiss. At this moment, Yizisu's hearing became more sensitive. She could clearly hear the sound of her heart beating faster. She could also hear the sounds of couples kissing around her. Her heart trembled. The feeling of her blood boiling came back. She no longer resisted. She slowly closed her eyes and gave in to him. The ambiguous sounds in her ears became clearer and clearer. It was as if she was in heaven. When Xiaoyihan picked her up horizontally and stuffed her into the back seat of the car, she suddenly opened her eyes and hugged his neck to stop him from taking another step. Her bright eyes were filled with shyness and her voice was seductive. "Brother Ihan, I'm sorry. I'm already married. I'm not worthy of you. Shaoihan's scorching lips rubbed against her neck. His deep voice was filled with desire. Zissou, I won't allow you to say such things. In my heart, you are the purest. You won't understand how happy I was when you were willing to look at me. Zissou, I love you. His scorching breath sprayed on her neck. His rough fingers rubbed against her skin. As she was pressed against his chest, she could clearly hear his intense heartbeat. A flame ignited in her heart and burned her body. She really wanted to follow her instincts and accept his love. However, she still remembered her mother's words. If a man obtained it too easily, he would not cherish it. Thus, she gritted her teeth and pushed him away resolutely. She frantically adjusted her clothes. Brother Ihan, we can't do this. I should go home. Shaoihan's handsome face was abnormally red. He took a deep breath and suppressed his desire. He said in a hoarse voice, I'm sorry. I lost control just now. I'll send you home. As he spoke, he combed her hair with his fingers. No need. Yi Zissou was like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. She frantically avoided his fingers. I'll go home on my own. She quickly opened the car door. Just as she was about to jump out of the car, Shaoihan's deep and sad voice was heard. Are you afraid of me? Her body trembled. She softly said, No, I just don't want my husband to misunderstand. Attention, Songshu 566. Chapter 885. Shaoihan grabbed her arm and said angrily, Who does Jiang Tianhao think he is? Since he let you down, why do you still care about what he thinks? Zissou, you're a good woman who deserves to be cherished by any man. Why do you still want to be with him and torture yourself? Her back was facing him, and her body was trembling slightly. The next second, her tears fell onto the back of his hand. It was icy cold, and he couldn't care less anymore. He suddenly pulled her into his embrace and howled with heartache, Silly. Why do you have to torture yourself like that? Finally, someone understood her grievances. Finally, someone felt sorry for her. She couldn't help but cry. She turned around and threw herself into his arms, crying like a child. He caressed her back again and again. He didn't say any comforting words, but she didn't feel lonely anymore. Her eyelids suddenly felt cold. His warm lips gently kissed away the tears on her face, bit by bit, full of tenderness. He whispered softly in her ear, Don't cry, baby. I'll protect you from now on. No, it's not worth it. Brother Ihan, I don't deserve to be treated like that by you. She shook her head with tears streaming down her face. Her long eyelashes were stained with tears, and her big, watery eyes were like a bright lake. Silly girl, you're very good. You deserve my wholehearted treatment. He kissed her forehead. His movements were extremely gentle, as if he was treating a priceless treasure. Forget about me. I'm already married. Yi Zissou choked with sobs and couldn't speak. She leaned into his embrace and sobbed softly. His voice was very soft in her ear. I fell in love with someone. She just happened to be married. I'm not afraid of being cursed. I just don't want her to ignore me. The night scene outside the car window was bustling with people. Yi Zissou's lonely heart was filled at this moment. It was as if thousands of peach blossoms had bloomed in her heart, fragrant and resplendent. In the end, Shaoihan ignored Yi Zissou's objections and drove her to the entrance of her neighborhood. Before she got out of the car, Shaoihan gently kissed her on the cheek. Fortunately, it was late at night and there was no one around. She was not worried about being seen by others. She shyly pursed her lips and whispered, Brother Ihan, drive carefully. Shaoihan brushed her lips with his finger and smiled gently. He opened the car door for her in a gentlemanly manner and leaned against the car as he watched her enter the neighborhood. Yi Zissou took a few steps and couldn't help but turn back. Seeing the handsome man standing under the light, her lips curved. She turned around and walked towards the elevator in a good mood. She did not expect to bump into Jiang Tianhao at the entrance of the elevator. A trace of panic flashed through her heart. She quickly walked forward, hugged his arm, and smiled. "Hubby." Jiang Tianhao's eyes were deep and dark. The corners of his lips curled up stiffly. "Wifey, it's so late. Where did you go?" Yizisu buried her face in his arm and could not see his gloomy eyes. She pouted coquettishly. "I went to a classmate's birthday party. I even mentioned it to you this morning. How could you forget?" Jiang Tianhao's expression became more and more strange, but his tone was normal. "I was too busy. I actually forgot about it." "Wifey, did you drive back?" Yizisu said coquettishly. "No, a classmate sent me back." "Was it a guy or a girl?" He suddenly lifted her chin with his finger, jealousy written all over his face. She laughed softly. "Of course it was a female classmate." "Hubby, are you jealous?" His furrowed brows slowly relaxed and he smiled. "Of course. My wife is so beautiful. There must be a lot of people coveting you. How can I not watch over you? You're so annoying." "Ah, the elevator is here. Hubby, let's go in." Jiang Tianhao's eyes drooped slightly as he followed her into the elevator. His hands hanging by his side clenched into fists. Birthday party, female classmate. Ha, what a good excuse. Did she think that he was blind and could not see her getting out of a luxury car? That man was so attentive to her. Even from a distance, he could tell that their relationship was not ordinary. If she was not guilty, why would she lie? That B*TCH actually dared to betray him. He would let her know the price of betraying him. That night, Jiang Tianhao was so passionate that it was scary. He did not wait for her to prepare and forcefully entered her. She was in so much pain that she almost cried. She begged him to be gentler. Although he said comforting words, his movements became more intense. He was like a ferocious beast, devouring her over and over again. The tearing pain made her unable to feel the slightest bit of happiness. She curled up under him and sobbed. He roared and after venting, he hugged her in his arms. His right arm wrapped around her neck with great strength. His pitch-black eyes were cold, but his voice was low and gentle. "I'm sorry, wife. I lost control just now. Does it hurt a lot?" Yizisu cried like a tearful person. She never knew that being forced to do such a thing would be so painful. She hit his chest resentfully. "Woo-woo, I told you to be gentler. It hurts so much." All right. Baby, don't cry. Let me see." Jiang Tianhao ignored her struggles and lifted the blanket covering her body. Sure enough, that place was already muddy, torn, and swollen. It was like a delicate flower that had been ruthlessly ravaged. It was pitiful, but also had a kind of miserable beauty. Suddenly, a tyrannical pleasure rose from his bones. Destroy her. This thought flooded into his mind like a tide. The wind rolled and surged wildly. He suddenly clenched his fists and closed his eyes, temporarily suppressing his desire to torture her. He took out a tube of ointment from the drawer and carefully applied it on her. There was no nitpicking about the feelings of guilt and pity. It was as perfect as the 24 filial piety husband in the past. On this night, Jiang Tianhao seemed to have discovered a new world and stepped into a new world. He released the violent and bloodthirsty in his bones and tried new things on Yizisu. He began to be passionate about cross-dressing games and would even use sex toys to liven things up. Yizisu was tortured to death by him every time. She couldn't believe how cruel this well-dressed man in front of her was. In just a few days, she lost a lot of weight. Every night, the thing she was most afraid of was Jiang Tianhao walking into the bedroom and taking out his latest game. She shivered and cried for mercy, but he was unmoved and still tortured her. After it was over, he was as gentle as before and sincerely begged for her forgiveness. Sex/violence. This word circled in Yizisu's mind. However, she was too embarrassed to say it out loud and didn't dare to tell anyone. She was glorious in front of others, but in private, she swallowed her bitterness into her stomach. She became more and more afraid and didn't want to persist anymore. The idea of divorcing Jiang Tianhao became stronger and stronger. Finally, she asked Xiaoyihan out. This was the first time the two of them met after Xiaoyihan expressed his feelings for her. The two of them agreed to meet at a high-class clubhouse. Yi Zhisu was wearing a high-collared shirt and black high-waisted pants, wrapping herself up tightly. When Xiaoyihan saw her, he frowned and said with pity, "Zhisu, why have you lost so much weight? Are you sick?" Yi Zhisu forced a smile. "No, I'm fine. Brother Ihan, let me pour you a cup of tea." Under Xiaoyihan's suspicious gaze, her slender fingers grasped the purple clay teapot and slowly poured the tea. As she poured the tea, the red marks on her wrist naturally appeared. She didn't notice it and smiled slightly. "Brother Ihan, please have some tea." Xiaoyihan didn't take the teacup. He stared coldly at her wrist. In the next second, he grabbed her arm and, under her panicked gaze, quickly rolled up her sleeve. At that moment, it was a ghastly sight. Her fair arm was covered with red marks. His face was ashen. Ignoring her cries of alarm, he rolled up her other sleeve. The same red marks covered her entire arm. His eyes instantly burned with anger. He gritted his teeth and said, "Did Jiang Tianhao do this?" Yi Zhisu's long eyelashes fluttered. Sparkling tears rolled down from the corners of her eyes. She hurriedly turned her head and wiped her tears. She said stubbornly, "It wasn't him. I accidentally fell." "Brother Ihan, don't misunderstand." "Fell?" Xiaoyihan was so angry that he laughed and said sternly, "What a fall. I really couldn't tell that you were capable of such a thing. What's so good about that jerk Jiang Tianhao that makes you treat him like this? Don't say any more. I beg you, don't say any more." Yi Zhisu covered her face with both hands. She broke down and cried. She cried very sadly, as if she wanted to pour out all the sadness she had been feeling for the past few days. His slender arms pulled her into his broad chest. Xiaoyihan pressed her head against his chest. His heart ached as he said, "You silly girl. He hurt you so badly, but you still don't want to leave him. Do you have to humiliate yourself like this and make my heart ache?" The person in his arms shook her head vigorously. She sobbed sadly. Her tears wet his clothes. He sighed and gently stroked her hair. "Zhisu, marry me. I'll protect you. I won't let you get hurt again." Yi Zhisu buried her head in his arms and sobbed, "I've already been married. Don't say things like you're not worthy of me." He hurriedly interrupted her. He lifted her head and held her tear-stained face. He said seriously, "I don't care what you were like in the past. I just want to have your future." The man in front of her was extraordinarily handsome. His expression was serious, and every word he said was powerful. Her heart couldn't help but tremble. Her tears fell even harder. Her lips trembled slightly. She asked in a deceitful and apprehensive manner, "You really don't dislike me?" "How could I dislike you?" Xiaoyihan sounded helpless. It was as if he was facing an unreasonable child. He stroked her hair and said dotingly, "I can't wait to love you. Brother Ihan." Yi Zhisu was touched and threw herself into his arms. She hugged his waist tightly as if she was hugging her last life-saving straw. The two of them expressed their feelings to each other. In a moment of excitement, they couldn't help but be intimate for a while. When Xiaoyihan saw the scars on her body, his eyes were filled with anger. He couldn't wait to fight with Jiang Tianhao. He was seething with anger. Yi Zhisu naturally enjoyed it. She hugged him tightly and comforted him with soft words. The two of them confessed their feelings to each other. Xiaoyihan took pity on the scars on her body and didn't go any further. This made her fall in love with him even more. She felt that he was sincerely treating her well. It was already past 9 o'clock. Jiang Tianhao was working overtime at the company and hadn't returned yet. Yi Zixu leaned against the headboard. Her eyes were slightly downcast